congestion. So we need to integrate with coaches, buses and trains. So those are my main points, but spending that money wisely is what we need to do. It's not a lot of money, but we need to look at making sure the connections and some of the Saturday services, like for instance, Shepton Mallet to Norton, I'm finishing, and Shepton Mallet to Wales. Thanks very much, Chair. Thank you indeed.
Thank you. Was that your first question, or did you encapsulate both? He's gone.
That
so
was,
I think it will.
No, I'm still here. No, I'm still here. That was capsulating most of it, really. But the only other thing I really wanted to add to that, the infrastructure, was the need also to improve probably if there's money, the bus stations, Bridgewater, Wales, Frome, etc. Taunton's already got the cash, and to work with the regeneration company in Yeovil to make sure Yeovil bus station. But only thing I think the final point I make is on this is, if we've got bus improvement plans and money, we've also got to make sure there's bus depots. And at the moment, we're struggling with not enough bus depots in Somerset, and that's where we're seeing cancellations and delays in Taunton. Thank you.
Thank you. That was it's a useful question. I think you've mentioned these questions before at full council. Was that right? Or no, another committee? Yeah.
In the other committee on the last week, yeah. Yes, I didn't mention.
I've got Councillor Richard Wilkins in room, and I think he's offering you a written reply. Is that right, Richard?
Yeah, I'll make sure you have a written reply. I mean, you will note that we've got a paper coming through on the BSIP to this committee, and I think some of the questions will be answered in that as well. So thank you, David. And like I say, we'll get a written response to you.
Yeah, thanks for your question, David. Very important issues indeed. Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Do we have any more questions? Public questions? We don't. So agenda item 5 is the Scrutiny Climate Place work programme, and I'm invited Jamie to present the work programme and the outcome tracker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members will find attached the work programme, the outcome tracker, and also the Executives Forward work programme. Just as a reminder, members, the next scheduled meeting of the committee is on the 28th of April, taking place in this room. Members will note that the work programme now has quite a lengthy list of items below the scheduled dates as to items that members have indicated they wish to add to future agendas. There is a piece of work, I think, for us as officers to go through and try and allocate those to specific dates. The draft meeting calendar for next sort of 25-26 is getting close to being finalised, so that will help us in that piece of work. What I would say is that Councillor Hobhouse recently raised about more regular recently committee meetings. Obviously, we have to balance out against the resource and capacity of services, and I think again, as people in the room and online who are more in a position to make calls as to whether there is the capacity to service those. I know, yeah, that there are. We don't have specific meeting dates moving forward on the 28th of April yet. There obviously will be one following, but I am mindful we have quite a list of items that members wish to see. I know Councillor Hobhouse, I think, had a comment he wished to make on the work programme, and I think Councillor Mansdell also wished to make a point on the outcome tracker at least. Back to you, Tom.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'll go with Henry Hobhouse. Councillor Hobhouse first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two subjects I wish to bring up. The first is the S19 reports from May the 9th, 2023. They are, and I have been rung up by 6 members of the public, completely inadequate. They don't have anything looking forward in case it happens again. what they've done is added the public responses as an annex to the original reports, and the original reports haven't been altered at all. There is online Pitcairn's flood representative for Pitcairn Parish. My 6 parishes who had 155 houses flooded on that one occasion are all dissatisfied with the S19 reports. Could we ensure that they come very shortly with the flood team and the authors and go through them? Please, Jamie. That's number 1.
Yeah, okay. We've got a phone ringing. It's not mine, is it? Are you okay with that, Jamie? Noted. Right. Thank you.
Number 2.
Go on then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the rights of way. At the moment, the strategic planning are dealing with the right. If it's a planning application, and they're not giving the people who come in with evidence the opportunity to argue the evidence because it is treated straight as a planning. The second thing is that the applications that have been received, we have had acknowledgement. I can't remember whether it was you, Richard, or Mike, who actually got the applications to be reviewed, and they are now being accepted legally, but they still don't have any new evidence, which is a legal requirement. I have agreed with Chris Hall that we need to get this committee to review the Complaint Rights of Way Department and the way they operate. And again, that needs to be scheduled in if we can, please, Jamie. That is the 3rd occasion that I have asked for this committee to be able to deal with the rights of way.
Yeah, good point. Actually, as Councillor Wilkins was mentioned, I'll allow you to come in first. Did you want to respond to that?
No, I've got a, if it's okay, I've got a further thing that I'd like to stick on your forward plan. Later today, papers for the corporate and resources scrutiny will be published, and these will include proposals for a more consistent application of parking policy across Somerset. We did have a group meeting offered, and some did take this up, but we anticipate the implementation of this to be of interest to this committee. So I'd like to propose to the chair that you consider a standing item on your agenda to review the implementation and plan and progress forward for it to go live.
On parking. Can't wait. Yes, of course. Judging from as we were talking about before the meeting, parking is a thorny issue. Are we okay with that?
Would that be from the next meeting?
Can I make a point? That is being considered by the CNR Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 24th of February. That is to get it in front of the budget because they're trying to bring it through the budget. Our next meeting is April. Did you realise that, Richard? And are you looking for a double scrutiny?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it concerns this scrutiny committee, especially with the implications. But yes, it'll still go through corporate and resources scrutiny on the 20th. I want us to scrutinise every aspect the implications of what we're doing at every process from the initial proposed outlying to the actual, you know, to it being implemented on the ground. So I just want to make sure that it's being properly reviewed by every aspect of this. So,
Thank you. So let's to clarify that unless we hold a meeting in between times, we'll actually be retrospectively considering this. Is that the implication, or I mean that's what you're suggesting?
No,
Yes,
not,
Mr. Chairman,
not-
it's going to through full council prior to the budget.
Yeah. But it will go through scrutiny anyway.
absolutely, but that is the overarching paper that's a right words, but you know that's a overarching paper with policy. That's a policy paper. What I'm suggesting is that the implementation of the policy should come to this committee as an ongoing. As we go through each thing, I think it's right and proper that it's fully scrutinised at every stage as it goes through.
Corporate resources.
Yeah, I get that. So Jamie should say corporate and resources won't be doing so. So thank you all for those clarifications. So we would expect that to come forward at the next meeting then. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Mansell, did you want to come back on that, or were you asking a separate question?
Separate, but I
Well,
will
both.
come,
Go ahead.
I will come back on that, please. So I've spotted the parking charges report, and it's going to create some waves. If other members haven't spotted it yet, it introduces loads of new parking charges. Anyone who's got a free car park, it's not going to be free anymore.
Can I just stop you there because
Chair,
the applicant.
the chair's in charge of the meeting. I think I
I'll
should
let
be
you
allowed
come
to
back.
speak. Yeah. So the report was published for corporate resources at the end of last week. It's come out. Division members haven't been consulted. Nothing's been offered to groups. So it's a very controversial report. Well, I'm a group leader. It's not been offered to our group. I'm a division member affected. I've not been informed. I can tell you that for fact. So this report is causing lots of upset, and I did copy an email to Richard about at the weekend. Now, I hadn't expected parking charges to come up. It's not on this agenda here. I'm going to go to scrutiny next week and comment. I don't know whether we need double scrutiny committees. But clearly, you know, we are being bounced into something on parking charges, as Henry has indicated, wanting to get it introduced into the budget. So I'm sure this is going to attract some comment. I can tell you the Facebook pages where I live are absolutely full of it. So you know, it's something that's very controversial, and it has suddenly come in. I'm not so sure about following it all the way through. And one thing that needs to happen is some consultation with the local towns and parish councils on this, and I think that's absolutely essential and vital. So I hope that starts to happen on that. Now, we've already had several comments that we've got lots of items on our agenda.
Dave, can I just interrupt you a minute? Are you moving on now from the?
Well, I am and I'm not, because I think this is relevant.
Okay.
So if I can finish my comments on the agenda, which I think are applicable to the whole thing, and then eventually I'd like to come back, but I can come back later on to the other comments which I had intended to do, but rather than the ones I've been prompted by from the discussion.
What I'm attempting to do is give Richard an opportunity to come back on that. Well, yes, if you continuing with parking, yes, then I was going to come back to you.
Well, I'm trying to say yes. I think I'm continuing on.
Okay, then carry on.
Thank you. So now, connected with parking, and parking's one of the things, just to try and make it clear why I wish to continue. We've got lots of items being suggested for our agenda, far too many than we can take, as Jamie's already indicated as well. I think we're going to have to find a way of managing this, and this applies to parking as well. That one, we have more meetings, but there's clearly some difficulty with capacity on that. I do wonder whether having double scrutiny is a good idea, considering the lack of capacity we've got, and I think we may need to decide, which committees are taking what items, and having two different scrutinies on the same thing, I'm not sure is a good idea. For items that we take, can I suggest that maybe some of them could be briefings. There could be briefings for all members. Perhaps there could be briefings just for this committee, which could be online and hopefully then easier to provide the capacity for, especially when they're information only. As we know, there's not a lot of point in bringing information only reports to us when we can't alter the outcome. So, we shouldn't be doing too much of that. I'm not saying we don't do any information items, but we shouldn't have lots of them coming to us, although we are interested in what some of those reports have to say, but that could be done through briefings or another way. The other thing that we might be able to create more capacity is having working groups on some. And I think the other thing is I think this committee maybe needs to own its agenda a little bit more. And maybe the whole of the committee needs to be involved in some discussions on our agenda. And perhaps we should have a separate, and it's not a decision-making meeting apart from what our agenda, actually have a meeting on our agenda and what we're covering, because we've got so much coming to us, which we just haven't got time to take. Thank you. Those are the points I wish to make.
Thank you. I think I would respond by saying that in many instances the points for information are presented as written papers, and the officer is in the room so they can be questioned on them. We've reduced those reports where the officer has been required to come in and deliver a report when we've had it in writing. So we have tried to cut down on that time. I agree with you on other things. There are numerous things that could come to this committee that perhaps are not coming as quickly as they might do because of the problems. And I've stressed in the past that I'm finding on a personal level, I'm signing off quite a lot of stuff as chair of this committee, which I would prefer to go past the committee. But the points you've made are taken, and discussing we need to find a mechanism through which we can discuss what might come forward to this committee. That's I'm happy to have your input, everybody's input on that. When we do it and how we do it, I think we need to resolve separately. Okay, thank you. Richard, I'm coming back to you because you were mentioned.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I do find it a bit disappointing that if what you're saying is true, that the Facebook has been full of a document that hasn't been published or is being published today without the details. On Friday. My apologies. My understanding it was good.
I don't think we're just doubting that this is the case.
Okay, I presumed it was being published today because of the timescales, but obviously I'm wrong on that. But I also like to point out that I believe that all the group leaders were offered the opportunity for a briefing. And the main opposition took us up on the briefing, as far as I understand, and probably learnt an awful lot from the officer concerned.
I would like to just interrupt you there. I think if for any reason Councillor Mansell was not included in that, I think this is not going to be resolved within this room. But if Councillor Mansell can find the evidence, or you can find the evidence that the information was sent to Councillor Mansell or vice versa, then obviously an apology is due if he didn't receive that information. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, Chair, I had to nip to the next room because the officer in question is through that wall, and the council and the administration that the policy that we followed since the new administration was formed of working with all the groups is a reality. And I think for a councillor to come here who was sent and received an email on the 29th, which I've just read, offering the opportunity to brief his group, I accept that we all get a lot of emails, and I have missed emails in the past. However, that isn't actually the case. Councillor Mansell was sent the email. I've just seen it. I'm getting a copy of it. I think it would be appropriate just to give a gentle apology for the fact that you suggested something which was, what's the word? Oh, untrue. That's the word. We will not operate in that way. We haven't, and we're not going to. It's an input. This is an important policy, and all the groups were offered a briefing. It's up to them whether they take it up, but certainly when the offer's been made, to say it wasn't, I think it was disingenuous. I think that's the posh word for it.
I actually wouldn't. I wouldn't accuse another member of this. I wouldn't accuse another member of this committee of being disingenuous. I imagine that if a mistake was made, it was quite genuine. And I'm going to give Councillor Mansell an opportunity to reply to that.
Oh, goodness me. Look, the very worst that's happened, and I'm quite amazed that people can't realise this, is I've not seen an email. That's the very worst that happens. I'm not in the practice of lying or saying untruths. And any implication of that, which seems to have been made, I very strongly object to. Now, I will clearly look for an email. When I spoke earlier, I had not seen an email. I have still not seen an email. I've now been told I have been sent an email. I will, of course, look for it, but I had no knowledge of that up till this point. But I accept what you say, that one's been sent. I will look for it. The very worst that happened is that I've not seen it. It has caused lots of upset, and Richard will be aware, because I sent you an email. Well, if you looked at your email, I sent you an email on Saturday morning about it. So parking charges isn't even on this agenda. We're spending an awful lot of time on it.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing was whether it comes on our agenda in the future. And I think we need to find a good way of working out our agenda for the future. And that's what we should actually be doing.
I'm suggesting it comes to the next meeting, and it's as with the implementation that we discuss. And I'll leave those of you on this committee to decide who's in the right and who's in the wrong, and apologies to be delivered by email and not through this committee. David, one more opportunity.
So I think we've got too much on our agenda. It's already going to Scrutiny Committee. I don't think it needs to come to Scrutiny Committee twice, not the same report. I don't think that's needed. We've got too much else that's important to do.
I take
if we're interested in doing parking charges, go to Corporate and Resources next week. I think it's
still on. The point has been made, and I am happy to take it at the next meeting. We'll have to disagree on that one. Councillor Andy Dingwall.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's a general comment, general frustration that I just wanted logged, that we, as a committee, don't have the Transport the Place section of the budget to scrutinise at any point. I know it's going to Corporate and Resources next week, or that is the plan. It should have been papers from the previous CNO, which was a joint scrutiny committee. The next one, to the best of my knowledge, isn't an official joint scrutiny committee. So we as a committee don't have an opportunity to scrutinise our focused area of the budget. So just a general comment, not to add on to the work programme, but a frustration that I'd like logged as we go through.
Yes, understood and noted. Thank you. I've got Helen Kay online. Helen.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Hi. I was wondering if this was the committee that looked at the local plan, because I didn't see it in the list. And there's a whole load of things that feed into the local plan, like the transport strategy and the local nature recovery strategy that are on the list. So I was just wondering if that was going to come to this committee in the future, or if, just bearing in mind, listening to what Councillor Mansell was saying, whether that's actually necessary, because we get a lot of briefings on the local plan. And we also, there's going to be, the first draft is going out for consultation at the end of this year, as I understand it. But I wondered if this committee was going to be looking at any of those aspects and whether it would actually add value, thinking about what Dave Mansell was saying, if it would actually add value to bring it to this committee. Progress reports I would be interested in for information, but again, that could possibly be achieved by going through briefings, because this is of interest to so many councillors. So I'm not quite sure how that is being managed. I know that the Transport and Planning Subcommittee of the Executive is leading on it, but that's not necessarily where it gets scrutinised and where we can pitch in with ideas. So I'm not sure if you can answer that question right now. Is it Graham that's responsible for that? He's in the meeting, but perhaps he might be able to throw some light on whether it would be appropriate to have that on the forward plan. Thank you.
Graham, you were named.
I think it's Councillor Rugby that rather than me. The lines between the portfolios are interesting and a bit of change, but I think that falls under Mike. But certainly, Jack.
Thank you, Helen. Coming back to Dave Mansell, who I think wants to talk on this.
Rightly or wrongly, I'm feeling a pretty dissatisfied committee member at the moment. Now, and before I got sidetracked by other things which were not in my mind to mention at all before this meeting started, we have got our own business, which has been long-standing to cover, and which we've been struggling to do, and which we've not been making time for at this meeting. And I do feel we should really emphasise again, we've got a really long list of items to come to this committee, and suddenly jumping items onto our committee, I'm sorry, as a committee member, I'd rather object to that. I'd like the whole committee involved in setting our agenda, because I'm starting to feel that we're having our agendas hijacked by others. Now, and maybe on items we want to cover, but can we please, as a committee, have a bit more control over our own agenda? Now, that's a general point, and it's really repeating what I've said already, but I still feel it strongly. Now, the things that I was going to come to, nearly a year ago, and I'm going to probably make it stronger just because of what's just gone before, but nearly a year ago, this committee made recommendations, and we've still not got to what we asked a year ago. That's an example of how we're failing to deal with our own agenda. And that's why I do feel pretty upset at these other items being jumped onto us. Now, and I think these are really important items, and we spent a lot of work. We've had task and finish groups doing a lot of work on this. Now, there's two bits which we've still not quite got to. We've started to turn it around, and this is to do with the energy plan, which we took a report on after having consultants working for the council, after having a lengthy task and finish group, and produced recommendations, came to the committee last year. We are slowly making progress on getting what was requested then to come back to us. Now, there's two things which still don't seem to be shown, so can I please highlight those? And I have emailed them round to everyone who I knew was on the committee, and to Jamie and to Paul, and possibly Paul may wish to come back, as Paul Hickson, as I understood, Paul was the officer who was taking these forward. Now, one is the energy plan and the task and finish group going to executive, the one that we agreed March last year. We have now heard that the energy plan is going to executive, and that's written in the outcome tracker. Now, it may just be an oversight, but it hasn't got that the task and finish group report will go to executive too. Can that please be added in? I trust it's just an oversight, and it looks as though that will be going to executive later this year, which is good, nearly after a year after it came to this committee. The other thing was that this committee has been pursuing energy questions for some time. We put recommendations to executive, which again went about a year ago to executive. We followed up with some of our recommendations here, and we particularly wanted and requested, and not only that, the planning officers said that early consideration could be given to this, early weight through the local plan could be given to the questions we were asking about. We've asked for detail. We've asked for a report back to us on how that will happen. Now, we did have a report on the local plan at our last meeting, but it didn't cover what we'd asked for. I feel this is quite urgent. I would really like to see that coming to our next meeting over a year after we asked for it. So other items are being made room for on our next agenda. I really hope room could be made on our next agenda for that, please. And it's 4.5. It's on the outcome tracker. You can see it, item 5 there. One last one, and this will be all I've got to say. This council is stretched. We need to look at where our priorities are and what is most important to do. Now, looking at some of those items that are coming to us, one that I think could make a real difference, and so I would suggest would be really good if it could come to us early on, and early on with a chance to influence it. So not a fully formed report where officers say they've done all the work and this is the answer. Let us contribute to it. That's what part of what scrutiny is meant to be about. So we're due a report on green financing roadmap for Somerset Council. I think that's got a lot of potential. It's something where it could even bring money into the council. It could make a real difference to the climate emergency. Can that please be given some priority and being brought to us early on? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Right. Paul Hickson was named. Anybody answer?
Chairman, I'm online.
Oh yeah, Paul. I thought I knew you were here somewhere. Okay, could you respond to particularly that first point? Thank you.
I'll cover the 3 points which I picked up from Councillor Mansell there. On the first point, regarding the outcome tracker, I think you're absolutely right. In that it is the energy plan and the recommendations of the task and finish group, so that's fine. On the second point regarding the local plan and the energy investment plan, obviously we brought an item to December's meeting of the scrutiny committee on a number of matters relating to progress across the energy investment plan. Very happy to pick up the point about the local plan matters. I'll ensure that a note from my climate change colleagues and the local plan service, which doesn't sit in my service area, but nevertheless obviously work very closely with them, can be prepared to cover that matter. And then finally, yes, in terms of the green financing point, James Duval is working on that with his colleagues in the service. If I may, Chair, if I can check with James on timing there. I appreciate Councillor Mansell's point about urgency. I think the point about a discussion and member input during rather than the polished item, understand that as well. If I just check with James about timing so that we can get that one exactly right.
Yeah, I'd like to see that third point on an agenda in the very near future rather than being deferred, if that's all right. Just a point on agenda setting. When we were looking at this agenda today, you'll see that there's a continuity. Transport plan, bus service improvement plan, and active travel. They all come within a sort of thematic umbrella, and that's one of the reasons we've chosen these things to go on the agenda today, rather than it being. I don't want anybody to think this is sort of this agenda is set just simply on the basis of whatever's convenient. It's not. There considerable thought goes into these agenda setting items, but I do appreciate that many of the things that we want to talk about we can't talk about urgently. I do also take the point that some things have been delayed and held over for an unnecessarily long time. I think we're trying to resolve those issues. So with that in mind, are there any other points people would like to make on the work programme? No, good. Right. In which case, I'll move on to agenda item 6, the local transport plan. Thank you. Sorry, I have to invite Richard Wilkins to introduce the item, and Matthew Prince will take over from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very pleased to introduce this draft for consideration. It's been an incredible piece of work to get to this point, but it is very different from previous local transport plans, you know, I'm very happy to take this forward for public consultation, which I think is an important side of things, to see how people feel about it. It's different from other local plans in that it's very much a high level overview. It's not a scheme specific document as such, but it will fit in with the local plan. I know we had discussions of the local plan earlier alongside it, and the teams have been working together to ensure that we have a very coherent plan for the future. This is about what Somerset looks like in the future, and it's very, in that case, it's a highly important document. And I'll just hand over to Matthew to give sort of a more of an overview of it. But I mean, you know, I'm sure Matthew could actually talk on this from now until the next scrutiny. But I think that perhaps you guys wouldn't wish that. But hopefully he'll be more succinct than me.
Okay, thank you. Well, I know he won't do that, but thank you. Matthew Prince, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check you can all hear me?
Fine.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got a quick presentation to run through with you, but thank you for inviting me along, and thank you, Councillor Wilkins, for that introduction. So I'll just share this presentation with you. There we are. We should be all seeing that. Is that okay?
All good, Matthew.
Thank you. Sorry, for some reason I can't actually see you at the moment. Okay, so the local transport plan. We were required to do one a long time ago in the Transport Act 2000, and then it sort of fell into sort of the background as things were then said that they weren't needed to be mandatory. We were sort of let go of the requirement to deliver it to the Department for Transport. It does set out our policies, our plans, objectives for all aspects of transport. And as you can imagine, our last plan in roughly 2014 is very much out of date. It really should set out the council's vision for all transport modes and how we would like to operate in transport terms as a council. It is subject to public consultation, and hence why we're bringing it to scrutiny, because we are coming here today to get permission to go out to public consultation. We have had stakeholder engagement through the drafting of this, and there has been a lot of input from both groups such as the bus service group, bus users groups, and mobility forums, youth parliament, etc., as well as it's been informed by study work that we've done with sort of consultants on climate, carbon in particular, and on place types and mosaic data, which is about people and how people are grouped together. It is our main document for communicating with the Department for Transport. That's a policy document. It's not our only method of communication. We do speak to them occasionally, but we do communicate with them and set out our agenda so that we are able to determine funding with them according to a plan that they can see the beginnings and the middle and the end to. And it is our way of, as I say, getting investment, and we need to make sure that we should actually always be pushing as much as we can for investment, both from the public sector and from all sectors, from development, etc. Why is it important? It's an umbrella document, and you'll be pleased to know that we aren't just in isolation. We do work with the Bus Service Improvement Plan, and that is the LTP will be the umbrella under which the BSIP sits, so they will inform each other. The LC WIPs, which is local cycling and walking infrastructure plans as well, are included in the LTP, as well as our EV strategy. So the three main documents that we have about active travel, public transport and electric vehicles are covered. We have commissioned, as I say, a study on carbon emissions, and that study is annexed onto the main local transport plan. And I did do an all members briefing last year on the results of that, but it shows what we could do to get to net zero by 2050. And we are aware that local future government funding will be linked very much to carbon. The LTP now is not just about getting from A to B. It's not a road-based transport type scenario or public transport. It's not about just the method. Local transport has now widened much more over the last 20 years into being around planning and public health, environment, school transport, social care, quality of life, air quality. All these things have now become part of transport's remit in terms of how it influences what happens in the county. So we have made links with all of those departments, all of those internal people, and we have a very strong link with the local plan. We want to make sure that we're joined up in everything we do. So the local plan is a way of us setting out our stall to make sure internally and across all our services, we try and have a unified approach, so we don't approach things from a siloed position, and that we try and do things together with funding, with connectivity, with a whole host of objectives that we will set out. And there are major hints that the future for funding is a multi-year settlement, and that the old method of annualized bids are reduced so that we don't end up in this feast or famine scenario or risk where we have to keep putting bids in to get money. So the local transport plan will be a key document in making sure we can respond to the multi-year settlement approach. It's a vision-led document. It's no longer predict and provide as we have been used to, where we predict what traffic we are going to get or what movements we're going to get and then provide the solutions. We are setting out a decide and provide, which is we set out the vision. What sort of place are we creating? What activities do people need to access? It's about policy and not infrastructure. That's not to say it's divorced from infrastructure. It is very much about setting the agenda for what infrastructure comes next, and that will come forward immediately after the LTP, an investment plan for transport. As I've mentioned, there is a very strategic relationship between the LTP and the local plan. The local plan is on a much longer timescale than us, and by the time the local plan is adopted in a few years' time, we will most probably be in the second iteration of the LTP, and that will mean that we will again be working in the right policy framework. As I said, we've tested it with people. We've gone with our colleagues as well, and we will be looking to join up as we go forward, all directorates with their sort of transport agenda. We've gone to a place-based approach, which is we have identified through Mosaic, which is a sort of social economic factors, as well as what we've looked at, how and where and why people travel, and again a report is in the appendix on how we've approached this and the evidence that's led us to behind this. We've grouped places together. We've grouped them in terms of how they operate, what they need, what's inside them, sometimes to do with the demographic mix, whether or not it's rural, whether it's urban, whether it's has sort of similar characteristics to other places. There is a strong rural emphasis. It's very much that what we'd like to say is this is not a one-size-fits-all plan. We are not trying to put policies together that basically just give the same thing to everybody, because we can't do that. Somerset is a much more diverse place. We have quite a different set of characteristics from one side of the county to the other, so we need to be able to pick up those. But what we can't do is we can't do a policy for every place, because we would be running into the hundreds of pages. You will see, and I'm not going to go into great details, that there are 7 main categories under that. So we've got 4 urban and 3 rural. They capture pretty much every space that we have in Somerset, and we have sort of categories in the rural areas which enable us to go from the more service centre, so places like Bruton and Langport, where there is a much larger number of facilities, down to the smaller village hamlet that has its needs very different, but is still connected to all of these other places. So whether it's a hamlet or whether it's a large urban area, they've all got some specific policies towards them. We have a vision. The vision is set out in 4 categories, as you will see, and it's quite deliberate that there isn't the word transport in our vision, because what we want to do is make sure that it is wide and covers the whole council, not just the delivery of a road or the delivery of a bus service, but it does have specific objectives linked to transport, and these are linked in very much with the council's plan that was agreed when the unitary council was formed. We do cover sustainability in more than one of our visions. We do cover health and active travel. We do cover the impact on the environment, and we do cover connectivity and resilience. So they are all the major tenets of the transport system, but we have made sure that this is something that it relates to people and place, not just to a route. Going on, and don't worry about the complexity of this document, it's really here to sort of identify how that works. So the vision starts us off, and then if you look at the far left, the larger of these blocks, that is the strategies for across the whole of Somerset. So we have a whole Somerset set of strategies, and you will see that, you know, reducing carbon is in there, road safety is in there, empowering communities for active travel links. There's a pan Somerset set of principles and strategies. This then translates down into a subcategory, whether that's urban or rural. In this case, you'll see rural up there. And then finally, it's down to the place type. They all relate to each other, but what we've done is we've sort of funneled things down so people can see things that are relevant to their area. That, you know, we are not talking about having rail services in a hamlet, you know, because it doesn't relate to that. But we do talk about the generic right down to a much more specific set of systems there. And finally, where are we now? Well, we've got the draft version. We want to go out to consultation. That consultation will be a public consultation managed with through Citizen Space, but also with briefings and interactions with our communities in groups. We are intending to set out our stall with LCNs and parish town councils through the different mechanisms we have, and we're going to give them a couple of weeks extra, about a fortnight extra, to have the plan ahead of the public consultation, because we know that parish councils in particular and LCNs don't have the same regularity of meetings, so we need to make sure that it's on their agenda, they know about it, they can prepare for it, and they can prepare a response back for it. We have done the carbon study, which I mentioned earlier. We have a long list of schemes. It's not part of it's not going to be included as part of this, because we want to focus on the policy. The next stage will be for that to be honed down and brought forward after the LTP has gone through the committee process, so that, again, we have a list of things that we would like to implement in terms of strategic delivery for the county. And we're hoping that that will form our 5-year investment plan, and that we end up with a final adoption process for the local transport plan for autumn this year, so that we get everything done by then. So that's everything. I'll stop sharing now, and happy to take any questions if there are any.
Matthew, thank you very much. Very good. Questions? Yes, Andy. Andy, Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Matthew. I can tell an awful lot has gone into that, as Richard said during his introduction, so good stuff. A couple of questions and a general comment that I'd like your view on as well. So the first part is decide and provide as a shift away from predict and provide feels to me like a shift towards a more high-risk strategy that could potentially leave us at risk of fighting against market dynamics and shifts, and also risks putting us up against the kind of required or wished behaviour of residents, kind of in favour of dictating how we want people to behave. And I'm not entirely sure I'm comfortable with that. So I'd like a little bit more around that. If you want to come back on that, and then I've got a couple of questions that I can fire through.
Certainly. Decide and provide. This came down from the Department for Transport and Ministers 2 or 3 years ago now. But it's also a part of what we'll be doing and what the local plan team are working through as well, in the sense that it's not controlling behaviour. It's not about we want people to behave like this, therefore we are going to only do this. It's about being outcome focused, as opposed to being purely trying to adapt to what is perceived to be the future. So what we're saying is, we know that we can't build loads and loads of roads. We can't build our way out of it. We've tried in the past, it hasn't worked. What we would like to know is that we would like to implement a greater number of public transport opportunities. We would like to have a greater number of active travel opportunities. It's about having a mix of opportunities for people, and how do we see that, and what do we need to do to deliver those? And we will still have to go through a testing process and a business case process to be able to deliver the outcomes. But it is all outcome focused. It's not about controlling behavior. It's about giving opportunities for people to change the way they travel if they can, and we appreciate that not everyone can. But it's also about saying, as a council, we would like us to have more public transport, more space for cycling, more space for more railway sort of infrastructure, better infrastructure for railway, better choice. So that's where it comes from. It's not about control, it's about actually informing that.
That makes sense. So it's a bit more about kind of intentional design rather than reactive. Right, I understand that. Thank you very much. So a couple of questions. Given this is a document that's very high level, there's no specific financial constraints put on you when making decisions there. Is there anything that is not in here that you would have liked to put in, and why has that been left out, if there is anything? What external and internal, I suppose, risks are there to being able to execute this strategy to the best of the ability? What should we as a scrutiny committee be looking out for over the next few years that's going to impact the execution of this strategy? As I'm reading through the paper, there's loads and loads of references to external grants and government funding. I think it would be helpful, just as a note here, it'd be helpful if the parts in this strategy that are linked to those are specifically pulled out and highlighted, and what grants we're tying these elements to. So we're doing this because it makes us more competitive for these grants. We're doing this because it allows us to apply for this funding pot. Pulling those out more specifically, I think would be helpful, certainly for me to understand.
Certainly, thank you. So anything missing? No is the answer, and I say that because we have done a lot of evidence gathering. What we have done is we've made, I'm long in the tooth with local transport plans. I've been through many of them in my time, and what this one does is it is very much realistic. It is very much based on evidence, very much based on what could be achievable, rather than what's fanciful. And I really do believe that this transport plan is much more realistic than some of the others have been. That's not to say it's not aspirational. There is a lot of aspiration in it, and that's what I'm pleased that we have a balance between aspiration and practicality. So I don't think there is anything missing for me, and I wish there was, so I could answer the question for you a bit better. But Scrutiny should be looking that we are, I think, pulling in a much more cohesive approach to transport across the county, and that we are working together with internal colleagues much more, so that it's not siloed, as I said, that we do have this much more connectivity approach to transport, that we are making decisions based on policy, and should we get multi-year settlements, that we are investing in that way, that we are connecting people together in the best possible way, and that we're looking out for all our communities, and that we're working across all departments. That's how I would like to see things develop, and that we are also looking out for new opportunities. External grants and funding, difficult one. I will be honest with you, it's difficult because it's an ever changing and moving feast for us, and we've been in a situation over the last sort of 5, 10, 50 years where it has been piecemeal. We have been having to react to bids as they come forward and going out to the department and various other sources. What we're hoping to do is have a much more comprehensive look at things, so bringing together a much more expert approach to these things, and say it's not only just DFT, there is DEFRA, there is DCL, Homes and Government. Sorry, I always get the name of that one mixed up, I'm sure we all do. So, we're looking at not just one ministerial pot. We try and find opportunities where we are, and there are opportunities out there, but it's somewhat difficult to get all over it. But we're trying to be a bit more expert and a bit more collaborative in being able to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker I've got on the list is Councillor Dave Mansell.
Okay, thanks. And thank you, Matthew, for an interesting presentation. Just one suggestion, which actually applies maybe to all sort of officer presentations like this. These screens are not as big as some of the ones we've seen. The slides were very detailed. We had the hope of seeing what was on there. It'd be helpful if the slides could be included in the agenda papers. Hopefully that's possible, and perhaps just as a general point, if we could look to arrange that, it would mean we could see the slides, which we weren't able to for this one. But anyway, it got over, and we had the report beforehand, so it's not a problem. It's just a suggestion for improvement. And overall, I think this is a good report. I would just I've got a few comments I'd like to make. Just to start, though, could I say it's noted that this has come after being to Planning and Transport Subcommittee. So can we just check that, can this committee actually have any influence on this paper now, beyond just making some general points which will be noted sometime in the future? Has it been decided already? Can we just check so we know, or is there still going to be opportunity for some changes before it's finalised and issued?
I'm going to Sunita to answer that one.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mansell, you're right, this has been to Planning and Transport Subcommittee already, but this is a draft for consultation, and the point is it's a draft for consultation, so we've got the opportunity now to take what we've got and make changes and move forwards with that. So yes, there is the opportunity, absolutely the opportunity to feed in, because it's still a draft for consultation.
Well, I don't know if that's quite answering the question I was really. I mean, if that's that wasn't actually the question I was asking. It was whether before the draft is issued for public consultation. You know, if we're just responding to now the document that's going to be issued to public consultation, that's slightly different. And I think that was something I was trying to make.
We can make tweaks. We've got to get documents to the design team to get them to design it up. You'll appreciate it's just in a Word document format at the moment, so draft format. So it does need to go to the design team. So we can make tweaks. We wouldn't be looking at this stage to be making wholesale changes, but that's the point of the consultation, is to pick up those larger changes.
Okay. I would say, Dave, that we did have this discussion in the agenda setting as to whether it was valuable to bring it to this committee, and decided, Henry and I thought it was, but I take your point entirely. It's very difficult to influence decisions retrospectively, but I accept Sunita's suggestion.
Okay, and good to thank you, and Sam. That's good that tweaks can be made. So I think whatever the answer, it's not going to change. Some of the points I'll make now, but some of them might be considered for tweaks. It looks like a good plan, good strategy, a fairly high level. I felt very comfortable with it. I was very interested in Matthew's response just now to the vision-led aspects of it, which I thought was good. It feels a little bit light on data overall. For something that's meant to be evidence-based, it was hard to see the evidence. So it'd be nice if the evidence could be made a little bit more apparent than I felt it was. But for me, it's heading in the right direction. But it is always good to be based in reality and knowing where we're at. One tweak that might want to be considered, which very much fits in with the new government, they've talked about bus franchising, and devolution is covered on page 34. I just wondered whether we might like to say something along the lines that, you know, we would consider the benefits for Somerset from that. It's a current live political option, which the government's promoting. It just seems an opportunity to at least mention it. No, I'm not suggesting any decisions, and I think it needs careful thought, but it's something that's there that could offer benefits for Somerset. So, and at the moment it felt like it was overlooked. On demand responsive travel, page 31, which is something we're sort of fairly strong on in Somerset. I have a feeling this needs looking at more closely. It does provide a good, valuable service to people who use it. I'm not in any doubt about that. The bit that I do just wonder about is whether how good it is at value for money, and how many people are using it. And there's not a lot of stats provided, although there are some in the next report, and I will come back to this. But my impression is, having been on quite a lot of bus stalls and so on, listen to what people say, many people are looking for more scheduled services, including in rural areas. And the demand responsive travel doesn't offer that. It's a barrier that you have to phone up or do it online and book it. There is a preference for scheduled services, and that's what we're most lacking. And Slinky does look pretty expensive, but we don't have a lot of information on that. So that's perhaps a bigger point, but something I think warrants further attention. Page 37, it's got achieving net zero by 2050. Now, it also says that the policy is aligned with our climate emergency strategy. Our climate emergency strategy says that we're going to achieve net zero or work towards net zero by 2030. The two are not compatible, and this has been mentioned many times. And I seem to be one of the few members who is willing to acknowledge we've got to look at that 2030 target. It strikes me as problematic to have two completely different targets and expect officers to be following both of them. In reality, what we're seeing is officers are ignoring what's in the climate emergency strategy and going for the government one instead. And I do feel as a council, we need to address that, not through this plan. It should be addressed through climate policy that we're addressing. But we're just continually fudging that. And, you know, will we get to 2030 before we change it? It does need looking at. Page 39 talks about shared mobility services and there elsewhere. I think there's a lot of potential here, especially for car clubs. If we could find a way of actually getting those launched and going, I think it's one of those things that needs to get started and can extend and has a lot of potential, and it can take cars off the road and cars away from car parks, which would be brilliant. I really hope we can you know, find a way to see what can be achieved with that. I feel it has some potential, so that would be good. Mid-sized towns, page 55. It mentions that many of them sort of face towards a larger town. I thought it could be a bit stronger on suggesting active travel routes between the mid-sized towns and the larger towns, and in particular the one close to me between Wellington and Taunton would be really helpful. Rural areas, something else I thought could be strengthened a little bit. A couple of things really. Well, one, there's this sort of, I think we need to, there is this, what do we provide? What's best for rural areas? More DRT, Department of Responsive Transport, or more scheduled, perhaps minibuses. And I think that needs, as I say, needs looking at, and that obviously particularly applies to rural areas. I thought for the active travel side of things, it could be a bit stronger, and particularly noting the potential that e-bikes enable a much longer range to be realistically considered. So those who cycle without the extra power and those with e-bikes, I think that's got potential. And again, it's in there. I think it refers to sort of traffic-free, low traffic routes. And again, we've got this more in a later report that comes to us. I like to call them quiet streets. I think there's potential for this in rural areas, a way of finding places where cyclists and walkers can go to quite comfortably, and feel that could be strengthened, and good opportunities there. And yeah, I think that's really it. Apart from overall, I should have said it perhaps at the beginning. I like what's been done. I think it makes sense. Looking at these different types of towns, areas, and what they need, it's worked. I think that approach has been good, and do wish to commend you on that, because I think it has worked. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Would you like to respond to some of those points?
Yeah, I won't go through every single one of them, if you don't mind, because obviously we could be here for a long time. But what I would say is I've taken note of all your points, Councillor Manto, and I will look to see how we can accommodate them in the draft before it goes off to for design. It is an umbrella document, and I'd very much like to say it sets out our sort of policies and where we'd like to go. So some of the things you mentioned, car clubs, I'm very long in the tooth in car clubs from my days when I used to work in London. I know car clubs backwards. We have tried. It's very difficult in this area to get an operator, but we are very mindful. And as I said, it's an umbrella document. So what we want to do is develop things further, things like mobility hubs, things like car clubs, things like much more connected bus services, etc., underneath this document. So you will see further development of services and ideas and policies in here, and I do appreciate the net zero. We have been in constant discussion with our climate colleagues and James and Mark. And yes, we are aware of that, and we are knowledgeable of that. And I know the climate team are working hard. We've based ours on the results that came out of a transport specific net zero approach. So it's about our contribution in terms of transport carbon emissions. But we are looking at that. We are working very closely with our colleagues, and transport represents nearly over 50%, I believe, of the carbon emissions. So we are limited by certain factors, but you know, the changes in electric vehicle provision being in 2035, the impact of reduced funding and such like. But we are working very heavily to sort of redress that balance and speed things up. And you know, just to reiterate that the bus side of things, you'll hear from the bus service improvement plan. That is the document where we will articulate how we go forward in detail, whereas what we are doing is giving the policy of things generally in the LTP, which will be answered by the BSIP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry Hobhouse, Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. I represent Castle Carey, and you put in here that there are improvements happening at the station. Could you inform me what they are, apart from the fact they're putting in lifts so that disabled people can cross the platforms?
Certainly, I think that was most probably the most of them, but we are working. I know that the Castle Carey and the Network Rail and Southwest Trains are working on their plans. We are in a bit of a hiatus at the moment with regards to some rail stuff because we're waiting for the next level of rail investment plans. You'll be aware that obviously things have stalled with Wellington, etc. But that's not to say they are out of contention. So what we're waiting for is the spring, or I think it's now June, comprehensive spending review, and some of the notice in the LTP are sort of holding for that, really. And so yes, I understand that it's not got the detail you'd like, but we are very committed to making sure all our stations are improved and the services improved as well.
The point I'd like to make is that the major improvements have happened, and that the car park is now 3 times the size, so that people can get in and out of London much easier, and the extra investment in the extra bridge over the top has been cancelled. Let me finish now. I'm moving on. The Newt in Somerset and Houser and Worth are now bringing in the better part of 500,000 tourists, both local and national. You talk here on the primary service centres about Cheddar being the only one with a tourist input. The other thing that Castle Carey Station, of course, has to do is to deal with Pilton Pop Festival, which is 32,000 people in 24 hours twice. I do perhaps suggest that you may want to put Bruton and Castle Carey with a tourist input now as well as Cheddar. Thank you.
Are you happy with that, Matthew?
Absolutely, duly noted. We did notice a couple of erroneous tourism bits from the Planning and Transport Committee. I apologise for that. This is it's been in draft for about 2.5 years with loads of changes. So some things did slip through the net, and I apologise for that. But we are going to do obviously a full check post this committee on making sure we've picked those things up. And yes, I totally agree with your understanding that Castle Carey should be brought into that.
I do love it when people stubbornly refer to the Pilton Pop Festival. It's a very local thing.
Mr. Chairman, can I make the point that on the station at Castle Carey, it has now got signs which say Castle Carey Station for the Pilton Pop Festival. Would you like to change your view?
I stand corrected on that very important point. Thank you. Councillor Wilkins.
And also, it's been noted that I think some performers have referred to Shepton Mallet as the closer town to the festival at times. I'd just like to come in on a few points that I've heard. I'll start with you, Henry, and just to say that as part of our improvements, and you said about the car park, we've made some alterations to that so that buses can now serve the car park and not dump people out on a grass verge, which was wholly inadequate, wasn't right. So we've done that, and we're working hard to get a similar result in Bridgewater and to try and get the connectivity between various forms of transport. I'll come to Andy's point, Councillor Dingwall's point on, I think Matthew did explain actually pretty well about the difference between provide and predict and provide. And just to make the point that it is very much not about that awful word, which I refuse to use, modal shift, and forcing people to do things that they don't want to do. But at the moment, if you look at, if you predict, say, traffic movements between two villages, I won't pick any out because otherwise I'll get in trouble, and there's only a road currently, well, you can look at that and say, well, in the future, it will only cars are required, so the road needs to be widened or whatever. That's obviously not desirable, not available, let alone desirable. What our strategy will be to provide options to people in the future, and it is about the placemaking side of things. This is very much set into the planning side of things as well, so that we give people more options. In Somerset, we are very car centric. It has to be said. There's very good reasons for that. We got to get our trackers to where they have to go, as Councillor Oakes has said. But it's not about telling people what to do. It's about giving people options, which they haven't necessarily always had. It won't work everywhere, but it's absolutely the right way of looking at Somerset moving forward, in my opinion. So I think that's where we come from with that. I'm trying to remember the points I had for Dave. You covered so much, and I did have a few points to you said about the cost of the demand reactive, and I think I'm going to pick on John to come in to explain the cost of proper services, if you like, or non-demand scheduled services. I think you'll find that the area that can be provided by one demand responsive is far cheaper. I mean, absolutely far cheaper than providing scheduled services in a similar sort of area. But not even, we would love to provide scheduled services across the county. Obviously, that is the desirable point of view. But in today's current climate, or current climate that we're receiving funding, it's just not available. So we have to look at what options are available. And my understanding is that the DRT, and in particular the DDRT, which is the digital demand bus services are very much growing in popularity, and as people understand it, and as we open it up to more people to make it available. But I'll bring John Perrott in just to either back up or refute what I've just said.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I'm quite happy to back that up. Essentially, yeah, providing what are traditional market day services, if you like, which run once or twice a week, bringing people from villages and hamlets into towns, has reduced over the years significantly because the numbers using them has gone down. But the use of DRT enables us to put 2 or 3 vehicles in a large area and actually serve the needs of people and on the days they want to travel and the things they want to do. And what we've seen with the digital program in particular is that gives people more control, because currently you have to book 24 hours in advance. With digital, you can book an hour in advance, and the system itself, if you can't get the exact time you want to travel, that system can offer you options and give you alternatives on the day, following days, that kind of thing. So what we're seeing in the digital area in Somerton is the numbers are growing quite quickly as people understand that they can determine in a way when they're travelling and where they're going to. And I think that'll have huge benefits when we come on to talking about the schemes later on, to encourage more people to use DRT in areas of the county.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Norman Cavill next.
That was the original derivacation of the name, Mr. Chairman, Cavill nowadays.
Oh, sorry.
But not to worry about that. No, an interesting report, and yes, good ambition. I'm more worried about unintended consequences. My division is an area where there's been huge amounts of development and more development still to come. And we have one coming up at the moment. Now, it is taking on much of the vision ideas, and that is that the mothers and children will walk to through the estate, join new existing walkways and cycleways, and take them down to the local primary school, new primary school. But the access for vehicles from the estate is in the other direction onto a country lane. Now, this is because it's, shall we say, more economically viable for the developer to do it. Now, the trouble is, in one direction on this country lane, there is a secondary school, and in the other direction, there is a very good and full primary school. Many pupils are walked along these country lanes to both of these schools. You are going to turn out from a circa 300 home estate, and Highways England will say 4 to 6 movements a day per dwelling, onto that road, the additional traffic. That is not making it safer. So that's the concern. So the answer is, when we see that with this new development, what sort of teeth do you have to provide a different solution with the developer to make him use the newer, better roads that are in the other direction with the cycleways, etc.? And I'm sorry to take issue with the portfolio holder, forcing people to do what they don't want to do. Those 300 houses will have no option but to take the long way round and to go round country lanes, causing mayhem, to then get back to the main roads, which is where they want to be, rather than where they should have gone, straight through and linked up in the first place. So how do you marry up the two?
Thank you. I thank you, because you've also stopped me from needing to ask a similar question in relation to a big development where I live in Frome, where we're due possibly to have 1,700 houses, and transport. Exactly the points you make are coming up there and have been made many times in the planning briefings that we've had. Also, just to say, it's Marcus Kravitz's fault that I'm calling you Cavill rather than Cavill. Yeah. Matthew Prince, please. Tom, muted.
Is that better? Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Schoolboy error there. Sorry. And thank you, Councillor. I'm going to do it now. Cavill, sorry. It's in my brain the wrong way now. I will promise to do better. I totally understand, and I think the good thing about the local transport plan is it's one of the sort of first steps of moving away from this approach we've had in the past, and we will be taking this through at an appropriate level of committee to make it an adopted plan and give it some weight and materiality for new developments and for our colleagues in highways development control to enable them to be a bit more firm and a bit more precise with what we're needed and take into account those things. It is also going to be something of a legacy from pre-unitary times with different local plans that are in existence, and what we're trying to do is work with our local plan and planning colleagues to facilitate things in a different way, and we sort of have set up much more integrated communications and advice with our planning colleagues to enable us to bring forward this new thinking. But the positive from this is that we are able to push developers in a different way than predict and provide would, and allowing them to use the viability and economic viability arguments all the time. So this is the hope. This is the mission and the drive that we want to go forward with, and working with our planning colleagues, we should be able to sort of change the way things currently stand.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Bradford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Matthew. Interesting debate, actually, very interesting. We've got all these dreams of building all these houses in the next 5 years, and we're going to build them very, very quick. But there's got to be some action very, very quickly. So money was mentioned, and you can't think about money. That's the first thing. So I suggest somebody get their act together, and we're going to really improve things, get out of some funding. I represent North Petherton. You did mention all the big towns, Bridgewater, Taunton, etc. Never mentioned North Petherton stuck in the middle of Bridgewater and Taunton. As my colleague here, Mr. Cavill, said it's 1,500 houses going up West Mountain presently before the next lot comes in as well, and there's probably a lot more going at North Petherton as well. Now then, a lot of that could be alleviated. There's been terrific mention of the danger of Walford Cross. You know what a complicated road system that can be at times for people who don't understand it. I brought it up a month, 6 weeks ago in an LCM meeting, actually, that National Highway should look at another interchange there. An A road going north, because you've got this traffic, all these houses being built at Staple Grove. They've got to come right through Taunton. Either they go out through Wellington and out through that way, or they come through West Mountain and out through into North Petherton again, picking up all the road, which is making it absolute chaos. Unless we've got to go back to horse and cart, I think somebody got to get their thinking cap on very, very quickly, because I can't see everybody taking to a bicycle. A lot of these ideas are very, very good by talking, but in reality, people will do what they want to do. And if they want to get in their car, they get in their car, and they want some freedom to do what they want. But I can see in the next 5 years, the area I represent could be a total disaster. Not mentioning the A361, which comes out of West Mountain, picking up all these 1,500 houses as well, but it's got to go for the little villages all right through. And Councillor Martin Connie did a work party about 2 months ago regarding these little villages that were affected by traffic and that already. So something could be done there with a little bit of thinking. If we were in America and Trump was there, he'd start saying, now, build, baby, build. Put that one right. Thank you, Matthew.
Do you have a response to that, Matthew?
I shall avoid any Trump sort of statements, if you don't mind. North Petherton is listed as a local service centre and has a series of things. But just to come back and say, this is not a infrastructure plan. That will come next, and that will come very, very quickly next, because we've done all the legwork on that. So I just want to sort of reiterate the fact this is an umbrella policy-led document, not a infrastructure-led document, but absolutely take on board your points and your comments, and that we should, with our infrastructure plan, look at what we can do there with national highways too. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you want to wait, Richard? I've got Graham still to give. You had your hand up some time ago. Graham Oakes, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify the council's position, and specifically possibly my position as lead member for climate change and the environment and public health about the 2030 target. I agree with Councillor Mansell up to a point. I can see the tensions and the problems that a 2030 target makes, but that is deliberate. And the reason it's deliberate is the government has a target of 2050. They're wrong. Simple as that. 2050 is too late. Whilst 2030 is very, very difficult to achieve, in my experience in local government, we succeed best when challenged. And the officers do come under that challenge, but that's not going away, because climate change is real and a present danger. And just because the government listen to their advisors who don't accept that, maybe, we see on a regular basis in Somerset the problems of climate change, and we have to address them. I'm very impressed with the report, I would say, and how that can fit into that. But I just wanted to be clear with the committee so they understand that this isn't just a little thing that the officers are environment about. All of the officers of the whole council are bound by the need, as it's council policy, to go for 2030, and I see Councillor Mansell's about to agree with me.
I'll let you come back on that, Dave.
I care passionately about dealing with climate change and addressing it. I think this is a major problem for the world, and we've got no option but to deal with it. Now, what we also need is to work sensibly towards what we need to achieve, and officers need some guidance for that. And what we're seeing is that officers are ignoring the climate emergency strategy because it's undeliverable. Where if we were serious about achieving the 2030 target, which I would have liked, and a few years ago when we were doing it, I was the one that I believe helped ensure the words "working towards" were in there, because even when we set it, I knew it would be really challenging. But we're now, if we meant it, and clearly we don't, we would not buy another fossil fuel vehicle. But we aren't. We're buying mostly fossil fuel vehicles in the council's fleet. We would be buying electric, and we're not doing it. And, you know, I understand some of the reasons, and right across the council, we're doing things that are going to continue to emit after 2030. And that just does not seem sensible to me. I think we need some guidance that officers can follow, and I would like it to be challenging, but it's got to have some realism in it, and having a target that officers ignore, I don't think is beneficial. So I'm not criticising what's in this report. I'd certainly like before 2050. I'm not advocating for 2030 because we're at 2025 now. It's only 5 years away. Anyone who thinks we're going to do it is living in cloud cuckoo land. You know, I say it with regret, but we've got to work towards these things as quickly as we can, and not set targets which are meaningless. I'm not up for that sort of politics. I don't think it makes any sense.
Thank you very much. We'll leave that there, and let's move on to Councillor Rob Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small comments and a bit of a technical question. Buses, the most important thing when having a bus service is reliability. I think if you want people to catch a bus instead of driving, I need to be sure that the bus is going to arrive. So that is the most important thing. and secondly, I totally agree with Councillor Mansell when he talks about active travel is absolutely vital. I mean, in my village, we do have a bus, but otherwise we have to drive to get out. And yet there is a disused railway joining our village to our local town, with the landowners on board ready to, you know, allow access. So really, we ought to be pushing this more and more. And the technical question, you did say you're going to let the parish councils have a 2-week run up to this. Is that long enough? Because most parish councils meet every month. So would it be advisable to have a month instead of 2 weeks? Thank you.
Matthew?
Yeah, thank you. I know that the bus reliability stuff John will pick up later, and active travel Sam will pick up later as well. So I'm not going to come back on those if you don't mind. And technically, there's 2 weeks on top of the consultation window that we are doing. So we're looking at about 6 to 8 weeks. I think it's 8 weeks consultation with the general public. So the parish councils and LCNs will have 2 months, or what's that, 10 weeks. So it should be enough to cover camp, and we're doing it before the summer holiday. So hopefully starting sort of after Easter, so that there's enough time and it's not time taken up with people being away to get a good response back from everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Councillor Dawn Denton.
I was going to make a note about how you can say my name, but you can only say my name one way, except I did have someone once write my first name as D-O-R-N, but I'm not sure that works. So just a couple of things. What I find really exciting about this is that it touches on almost every department of the council, and well, it does really, because it fits into everything that we do. And it's all about community. And my question really is around the consultation. To try and get it, if you want a community-led product at the end of it. So the elderly specifically, I'm concerned about them being reached, and if there's a link in a citizen space online, they're not going to engage with that process. And also the people who are physically on the bus. It's great to talk to people who work with the buses or have spoken to people, but actually the people at the bus stop, the people getting on the buses, and people in a car park about why they aren't using the bus would be another option. The report did make mention of specifically women feeling unsafe on public transport. Are the police included in that consultation process? Also, we did make a brief mention of tourism, but we are trying to grow this county and not just make it a stop off on the way to Cornwall. And it would be really useful if we could engage more specifically with that targeted group of the tourism organisations. So whether it's Visit Somerset or whether it's B&B owners, pubs, cafes, that kind of thing. And of course, sites and venues and National Trust properties. The other thing is with the rail projects, this is a high-level government decision about money, and it would be really nice if the MPs could be engaged in that process as well, really, about how, getting them on board and pushing them their weight around in Parliament would be really nice. I've also thought about there was mention of freight transport, and we, of course, have the quarries up in the, in the Frome area. And that's a vast network, and it would be really good to include them in the business and consultation phase as well, because they play a role. But we do also have a lot of factories and organisations that are isolated, and things like bus shelters. And I know there was mention of all the ancillaries, but like people, have to stand just next to a sign. These are things that put people off about getting on a bus. And then, it was reference as well to half the population being Christian in the county. And I know that Sunday services are generally really quite expensive. They're not, fully funded, but it would be nice to think if there's any option to engage with those groups about how they may, have access to their church community, specifically some of these isolated areas. And then the other thing I wanted to mention really is enforcement. And I know we've got Councillor Kay online, and she's probably going to mention some of this, but, the public rights of way, specifically coming out of S106 agreements, when there are new developments and that people are cut off from the community, from the village, because there's no access that's come through the S106 and has not been enforced. I mean, there's an incident in Road, and people cannot get into the village because there's no enforcement on the S106 agreement. And then there's other schools that have got in an S106 agreement to have minibuses, and those have fallen away because there's been no enforcement. And that would be really useful, specifically in some of these village schools where the children are coming in from not necessarily in the village, they come in from outside. So those would be good groups really to consult with, but I also think enforcement would be a really good one. And then my final question is, how often are these routes, bus routes, etc., assessed? Because if you suddenly do have, big development, that route may not serve anymore, specifically getting people to hospitals, etc. So I know that this is a high-level draft document, but it's just some thoughts I had while going through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Denton. The consultation process will be as wide as we possibly can and as targeted as we possibly can. It is going to be restricted, obviously, by resource and money, but we are committed to capturing all those hard-to-reach groups and those seldom heard. So, picking up the elderly, the mobility impaired, we will seek to do that. We have a consultation plan. We appreciate that not everybody can deliver stuff by citizen space, and we will make sure that we are able to pick up as many people as we possibly can with the consultation. We have been in quite a lot of conversations with different groups around the council. So our economic development team, our climate team in particular, have had sort of buy-in and worked with us on this. We work with our sub-regional transport body, Peninsula Transport, as well as Western Gateway on the other side, to ensure that we are joined up with rail, freight. They are quite considerable transport operations that don't just feature in Somerset. It's best if we go together as a group of local authorities and push for those. So we are working across those. There will be some things we can't do everybody, but we will endeavour to ensure that with our press colleagues and our PR colleagues and marketing, that we get out to as many people and that we consult as widely as we possibly can. And with the matter of enforcement, Section 106, unfortunately, I'm not the person to comment on that because that's usually a planning-led thing, and the planning team would be the people to ensure that enforcement of Section 106 is happen. But we have worked with local plan people, and we are working with the Rights of Way team as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I've got two online. I'll come back to Richard. I think you should wind up. So the first person online is Councillor Helen Kay.
Yes, hello, thank you. I have just skimmed through this, I'll be honest. I've been looking at it, well, we've been talking about it quite a long time during the time we've been talking about it. And I was looking for car sharing. I mean, I think it's a great report and I think there's a lot of detail in there and you've covered absolutely everything else. But the only things I found with car sharing were looking at what you call the connected towns of Glastonbury Street, that area, Wells, where you know that people move between those towns and you could set something up there. And then it appears again on, I think it's page 44, it jumped out at me in a table down there under sustainable transport. It's just that I know that this is going back to what Martin said about the 1,700 house development in Frome, that the developers are predicting a 6-fold increase in car sharing. Now, I don't know how they intend to do that. If either they're going to fund it or we're going to have some policies. And I think it would be great if we did have some policies that go across the whole county. And I know that having been an officer in Wiltshire, I don't go to Wiltshire very often now, but when I was sort of driving around Wiltshire, there would be great big signs on the major routes that encouraged people to ring a certain number to do car sharing. I don't know if they still run that. If they do, it might be worth talking to them. I'm sure you probably have, Matthew. But they they push it on the major routes, and I think I understand that underneath all your this great policy document that there's going to be loads and loads of data. There'll be loads of evidence gathering that you will have done. So you'll know your travel to work or TTW data. And I would have thought that you could have had more car sharing schemes being promoted other than just the Glastonbury Wells area. So, for example, looking at the main travel to work areas. So we anticipate that I think it's been already documented that 60% of people in Frome actually work outside, the commuters work outside, and they go north along the A36 to Bath and Bristol. That, you know, you could have sort of some kind of database or digital thing where you sign up to car share doing that particular route, and there must be other, you know, there must be like a top 10 commuter routes, and because commuter traffic presumably is one of the biggest problems. It's going to be people getting in their cars. This 60% contribution of transport to our carbon emissions. I think I read also in the paper that 40% of that is car travel and 20% of it is freight, something along those lines. And I'm just thinking, well, you know, a lot of that's going to be commuter traffic, and why haven't we got car sharing in there a bit more actively? And then I also noted on a sort of in a parallel universe at the budget cuts that the post for a travel plan coordinator is being cut so that we can have an extra person dealing with how we coordinate transport and planning together. That's one of the things that was just discussed at the, when we okayed the restructuring plans last week. And I'm thinking, well, you know, the only other way to get car sharing in here and to fund it is through a travel plan coordinator for when these big developments are, conceived and then applied for and then approved. Surely, you know, that's one of the car sharing is going to be not just car clubs, but car sharing is one of the things that we need to be pushing. So I just wanted to get your reaction to that and why it has such a low profile in here. Compared to such a high profile in the developments that we're looking at, the applications that we're looking at.
Thank you, Helen. Matt.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Councillor Kay. Car sharing, it's something of old that I've dealt with over my career, and it is very vital and important. And I take that comment that you mentioned about it being wider than just Glastonbury, etc. I will pick that up and have a look at how I can include. I think it should go in the Pan Somerset a bit more explicitly. We have car clubs in there, and we have sort of bicycles and scooters and things like that. But I think bringing in car sharing into that, car sharing is somewhat difficult to do development by development, and there are plenty of car sharing services out there that I'm aware of that we could investigate bringing on as a part of a wider strategic aim for Somerset. So I will look to do that. I'll look to include more a higher profile of that, and to look at the future of how we can bring forward something like car sharing so that it is both easy to do for our residents and across the board in the county.
Thank you. I think there are a whole load of sort of private, there are websites that you can just go and look at, and they're often like long lists, like I need to get from here to London or whatever. And
yeah.
But I think if the council was promoting it in the way that Wiltshire did, it might sort of centralise it, so you're not looking at a sort of a whole range of different websites, but you go to one, and you know that if you go to that one, that it's going to be able to direct you and help you, make it easier. Basically, got to make it easy for people. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking. I think that's Councillor Ros Wyke. Is it you, Ros, online?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Two things, if I may. And thank you, Matthew. I do appreciate this is a lot of work, and secondly, it is a high-level document. But there are a couple of things which kind of concern me. One of them is on page 63. You refer to connected settlements, And these are, I presume, premised on having a bus service. Well, I'm just concerned that we need to have a degree of clarity of what we mean by a service. If you have 2, maybe 3 buses a day and they can't get people to hospitals, colleges, schools, etc., then I think using the word service is probably a stretch. And secondly, some of these services are dependent on subsidy. And it was made very clear that the route serving the communities along the A371 were only getting funded until March of this year. And they sit and wait to see whether they'll get funding beyond that date. And therefore, I think we just need to be careful when using the word connected, that these are predicated on a very fragile service at the best because of funding purposes. Secondly, what isn't in the document, and I do think is probably one which there is no simple answer to, but I think we do need to recognise that we will have conflicts between some of the transport policies and some of the planning policies. And I cite an example, a live one, which I saw going through a planning committee, not within my ward, but I was particularly concerned about it, and that was in the village of Butley. And Butley have got a new development. It's been signed off after a successful appeal for some new housing. And the officer cited at great length in the presentation the new placemaking policy or placemaking document which went through planning last year, where no longer garages will be built, but instead carports, and also a very limited amount of parking on site. Now, appreciate in an urban environment that may be helpful in terms of reducing the amount of parking and stopping garages being turned into extensions to houses. But there is an issue about where do you store your expensive electric bike? And we need to address this, because if we want to encourage people to cycle, you can't expect people to, in very small modern houses, to wheel a bike through the house and then maybe store it in the limited back garden or whatever. We do need to address the issue of parking. And the second element, and this is one where again there is no easy answer. Increasingly, employers require employees to take their work vehicle home at night, and these are often quite large white vans or similar things, and these really do take up an awful lot of parking on housing estates. Now, there are some housing estates, and I cite one in Wales, where these vehicles are banned. But one way or the other, we need to address those two issues. We can't ignore them, and we need to make sure that we find a way for safe storage. And I'm glad to see that in the document it does recognise we need safe bike storage in the communities, in the towns, because if people are cycling into communities, they need a secure place to store expensive electric bikes. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, any response, please?
Yes. Firstly, connected towns. I think there's a bit of a
settlement.
Sorry, connected settlements. I think it might be a good point for me to have a look back on the terminology, because my understanding of the connected settlements were that they were connected to somewhere because they shared services. So like they were sharing a hospital, cottage hospital like Shepton would be connected to various other places around that. So I think there's a terminology thing there, and I totally get it. So thank you very much for picking that up, because our designation of towns is not going to be exactly that. I think by the time we come out of the consultation, there will be movement on that, and with our local plan colleagues too. So thank you for bringing that.
forgive me, if you look at page 63, it actually refers to settlements, and these are small villages.
Yes, and I think that's, yeah, I
not the
understand.
towns ones.
No, and I think that's where we talk about, again, connection between sort of like a village that has a shop and a village that has a primary school and things like that. I will take it away, Councillor Wyken. I will make sure that the language is clearer before we go out to consultation. So definitely pick that one up. And I think, I think we all share the same views on making sure that we have appropriate cycle parking in new developments, and that we work with our planning colleagues on that. We are working very much with our planning colleagues, with our highways development control colleagues on setting up drop-in or appointments service, so that they can come along and discuss things with policy colleagues, with our active travel colleagues. So our ways of working are evolving and developing so that we produce a much more consistent, and we look at what's missing from the policy side of things to be able to shore up and support those planning colleagues when they get to decision making scenarios. So we are working much more closely with them, and we will continue to do so. But totally agree, the work vehicles and the cycle parking, we need to be working much more strongly with them on that. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Finally, Richard Wilkins.
I'm going to do a bit of around the house, if I can remember. I'll start with Councillor Bradford and his Trumpian commentary. I'd like to point to his divisional member and leader of council with a slightly tongue-in-cheek, admittedly, commentary on the suggestion of changing the Bristol Channel to the Gulf of Somerset as a and going on to Dave Mansell, we would like it to stay like that and not actually become the Zuyder Zee, which is the map which shows a 10-metre rise in sea levels and has the sea going up to Glastonbury. Yeah, pretty much. Well, if you see the map, it's a useful indication of what climate change how it could impact Somerset directly. We are one of those low-lying areas that is affected by climate change, not to the degree of some South Sea islands and places like Bangladesh, but we are in amongst that mix. So
a twin with Glastonbury, or twin with Venice.
Yeah. So now moving on to Councillor Cavill, and actually yourself, Councillor Dimmery, in regards to your settlements, and I think it's fair to say that the point of this document, when it comes to planning, is it does fit alongside our general plan. It will fit alongside and give extra teeth, so that we can avoid the sort of scenarios that you both are talking about. But it also must be noted that the way planning works, as you all know, there's always a bun fight for the funds, and the only thing that is ever ring-fenced in this bun fight is the profits of the developer. But having said that, we work very hard to our transport side work very hard to get the best outcomes. Where it becomes difficult is where there's a government call in, and I'm thinking particularly in Councillor Dimmery's area, where all the good work that our officers have done could potentially be undone. So I'm hoping that we will have very, very strong representation and be able to sway the thought process in that particular development in particular. I think that's fair assessment, and I've made provision for that to be the case, that we do put a strong case forward in your particular argument, and I take on board the issues that Councillor Kevill and you've been very, very vocal and have very much informed our officers. And yes, there's, like I say, there's always a bun fight, and it's one that we need to get certainly better at. However, you know, there are competing. There is, and Councillor Denton mentioned S106 monies, and there's competing. There's a lot of competitive stuff on the 106, and again, you know, from my point of view, I'd like to see it all. There's schools, there's doctors' surgeries, there's a lot of competing things, and it's just getting that balance right. What this document will hopefully do is it will sit alongside you know, our planning team, and able to us to have that argument a lot better, a lot more informed, and to and certainly with the developers, give them that understanding what we will be requiring of them. That's very much what this document is about, and that's why it needs to go forward. And I think actually we've and I'm speaking for Matthew on this. I think that we've had some very interesting points put to Matthew that will definitely fit into how we first of all take this to consultation. And actually, I think it's very important that all of us here promote this. And on Councillor Denton's point on getting it to the people so that they can comment and give us even more useful information. Let's make sure that it is promoted as best we can. And yes, it's always the case that it never quite always goes to the people that really should be, you know, commenting on these things. Well, let's try our damnedest to make that happen. Sorry, my language. Yeah, and actually, it would be useful if you all contributed to that at that further point, because I'm sure once you've had, you know, you've fully absorbed this document, and I'm bearing in mind that a lot of you have skim-read it, you know, because it's a fairly over umbrella document. So understanding how that fits, and it's, you know, and I'm sure everybody's got schemes they've got in mind, but this is not about that. This is about the overarching umbrella of it all. So I'm hopeful that you will all contribute to the further the consultation, as well as what actually really useful stuff has come out today. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. There's a very long debate. We're going to have to call a break now before we go on to the next thing. I would say keep it 10 minutes. I want to say congratulate you, Matt, on two things. First of all, and primarily the report, which was very thorough, has engendered this, and also for managing to speak to us from your mountaintop location on the quad. And I congratulate you on being the only person I know who's actually dressed to appear like the backdrop. So thank you very much, and we'll take a 10-minute break, please. Right, thank you very much. If we could take our seats, thank you very much. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for this meeting overrunning. I'm also aware that we this is always a well-engaged committee, and I don't want to. In my role, I don't want to stop people talking at all. But if we can self-edit, sometimes it would help, because some of us have a tendency, I'm the same. How do, no, if you could speak up a bit more, we'd be very grateful. And we're going to have to sort of try and be a bit more succinct, otherwise we'll never get through this agenda. So without further ado, let's move on to the bus improvement plan. And again, it's Richard Wilkins to introduce the item. Thank you.
Then two turn up at the same time. Okay, I'll be very quick. You know, we've been very pleased to receive a 1-year settlement for this coming year from government, and we are hoping that it will turn into a multi-year settlement as indicated moving forward. So we've got so we'll have an overview from John. I think will be Sam will be between the two of them. We'll give you an overview anyway. Yeah, you know, just to say, we have to be very careful with the 1-year settlement, as obviously until we know the multi-year settlement, we can't commit to everything we would like to, including services to every village in Somerset, which is clearly not affordable, as I'm sure John will explain. Well, I'll move straight on to Sam.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Sam, sorry.
It's all right. I'm gonna put the slides on the screen while I'm doing that. What I was just going to say is I'm going to run through the slides relatively quickly. The slides were sent out with the agenda pack, so hopefully you've had the opportunity to look at those already. What I am bringing to you this morning is a little bit more than is in the slides. Because of when we had to submit papers, we hadn't done quite a lot of the work. We hadn't finished quite a lot of the work that we've been doing on preparing the BSIP submission. So actually giving you a bit more information than was in the agenda pack that we submitted, so that you've got a little bit more information to look at and scrutinise before we go towards final decision. So yeah, it's a bit more, but the beginning part of the slides are exactly the same as you've already seen. So just quickly to run through, we haven't had to bid for this allocation, this BSIP funding. This has been allocated to us by Department for Transport on the basis of our bus service improvement plan, the population that we have in Somerset, the bus mileage and the level of need based on their assessment. We've been allocated approximately £3.3 million worth of capital and £2.9 million worth of revenue funding. And we'll show you how we're going to look to spend those in a minute. We only received the formal terms notification on the 20th of December. And in order to get us to a place where we'd worked up a package and taken it through the decision processes for submission to DfT by the 31st of March, it's been a really quick turnaround. There's been an awful lot of discussion, an awful lot of work that we've had to do in order to get to the place where we are now. So that action to date has been working with the local bus operators. We've worked with all the main bus operators and a number of the smaller operators as well. We've reviewed our existing bus service improvement plan schemes to understand what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what is a reasonable thing to take forwards. We've obviously looked at our 2024 BSIP, which I remember coming to you and talking to you about last year. We've worked with the Somerset Bus Partnership. We've presented at the bus user and stakeholder group, and we've talked with all interested parties. And it's fair to say we've had a lot of people come to us and say, we'd really love you to do this. You know, people see you've got money and say, can you do this for us? And we've taken all of that information on board and brought that all together in the package that we're going to present this morning. I've said the governance has been challenging. The bus advisory board discussion was at the end of January, so we needed to get to a place by the end of January where we had something to discuss with the bus advisory board. And we're now at 17th of Feb and the scrutiny meeting. The idea is that we will get a delegated decision from the lead member taken on the final schemes in the middle of March, so that we can then make that submission to the Department for Transport at the end of March. So we came up with a number of funding themes in order to start the thinking. And these were around replicating the successes that we'd had in our first round of BSIP funding. And that's to continue the schemes that are working well in Taunton, understanding we've looked at what's working well, what isn't working so well, what gives us good value for money, and continue those. Deliver similar packages in Yeovil and in Bridgewater, and then look at other initiatives, whether they be very targeted or county-wide initiatives. Something's just happened on my screen, sorry. But I will now move on to, the schemes that we're proposing. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see these okay. I've just tried to make the text a little bit bigger. John is going to run through the revenue-based schemes, and I'll pick up the capital schemes as we go through.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is John Perrett. I'm Service Manager for Transporting Somerset, and I'll try and run you through in detail the schemes that we're looking to take forward and the new ones we're going to introduce. So taking it in packages, we've got the Taunton Town package first. There are currently 5 evening services being funded in and out of Taunton with the current BSIP funding, and we're proposing to continue those. That's the 1E town service from Priorswood through the town centre, the hospital, and out to Silk Mills. 21 from Taunton to Bridgewater, the 22 from Taunton to Wellington, the 28 from Taunton to Minehead, and the 30 from Taunton to Chard. We then have a town service in Taunton, the 3, which runs from Bishop's Hull across to Hudson Way, which is on Bindon, just off Bindon Road. With this service, we're planning to continue it, but we are going to alter it slightly in that the service will continue to serve Bishop's Hull into the town centre, but then we'll head off south of the town to serve South Road and Shoreditch Road and Chestnut Drive, where we've had lots of representations to replace Service 6, which was a town service that used to be run commercially by First in that area, and where there's been a very low level of service for about 3 years now. And we have an opportunity to do that because of changes elsewhere, which I'll come on to in a bit. So the idea is to improve that service. It'll also give links from Bishop's Hull and the western side of the town through to Richard Hewish College and back in the afternoon. And we're timing the journeys to make sure that buses do arrive at the start and finish times of College Day. Park and ride fare, as you know, the current park and ride fare is £1. We're looking to continue that. It's been very successful. We are carrying over, we have over 40,000 passenger journeys a month currently on the park and ride. And since we changed the double decks and the 20-minute service, we really held on to the passengers, and indeed we've seen some growth in that area. So we're quite keen to continue that. We're also looking at our demand responsive slinky services in Taunton and Wellington in particular. And in this area, we're going to make some improvements. We want to introduce digital demand responsive. So at the moment, if you want to book a slinky bus, you have to ring 24 hours in advance to make your booking. Digital enables you to book 1 hour in advance through an app on your phone or over the internet. Or you can still make the phone call to the office. We're not removing the ability to phone and make bookings, but the advantage of this is that the system itself works out the most efficient use of the vehicles. It gives passengers options. So if they choose to travel at a certain time and buses are busy at that time, it gives people other options, suggests times they could travel, other days they could travel, that sort of thing. And what we've seen in Somerton is that the take-up of the service since we introduced that has been much swifter, because once people realise that they can use an app and they can book it themselves within an hour, and they get options to travel at other times, that's encouraged more journeys. We're also going to increase the operating hours of the service. So at the moment, it's 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and we're looking to replicate what we do in Somerton, which is almost, we have 7 till 7 in Somerton. What we found is that 7:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening are the busy times. So we're going to look to widen the scope for Taunton to 7:30 to 5:30 Monday to Friday to capture a bit more commuting, children going to school, students going to college, that kind of thing, and people returning after 5 in the evening. And then the other improvement we're going to make is to look to put new vehicles onto that service. So that involves 3 new minibuses for the Taunton Slinky, which is part of the capital bid to improve the vehicles that we use on that service.
And on the capital infrastructure, you'll be aware that there's work ongoing to bring forward the Taunton hub in the old bus station site. This funding would give us the ability to do a little bit more at that site and make that a better site. So we'd like to add some funding into that proposal, and also that the site of the Comitro Park and Bus is coming forward in the not too distant future. For those of you that have travelled on the Taunton to Wellington road recently, you'll probably have seen the creation of that happening in front of your eyes. We're looking to see whether we need to do any more in that hub that the developer isn't proposing to do to make that a better space. So that's why that's on the package.
Turning to the package of schemes for Yeovil, Yeovil is the only major town in the county which does not have an evening bus service at the moment. So first on the list is that we're looking to extend 376 from Bristol, which currently terminates in Street in the evenings, to continue to Yeovil. So the 376 will now run through to Yeovil in the evenings. We've got existing support for Service 1, Yeovil to Shepton Mallet, Service 54, Yeovil to Taunton. And those are continue with the services as they are, but continue that funding. Service 58, Wincanton to Yeovil, was originally supported with BSIP. The bus operator then took the service back on commercially, but have since come back to us again to say that they cannot provide that service commercially. So we're going to take that back in again as part of BSIP funding, make some minor changes to it just to reduce a little bit of cost, but essentially run that service with BSIP funding as it used to. Service 68, which is the link between the town centre and the stations at Penmill and Yeovil Junction, will continue as it is now, and that's delivered by our own in-house fleet using one of our minibuses. And then Service 81, from Yeovil to South Petherton, again has BSIP funding currently, and we're proposing to continue that funding and leave the service as it is now. There are further improvements we want to make, however, in Yeovil. The first is to take Service 51, the town service, which first provide, and introduce a Sunday service. And the way we're going to introduce a Sunday service for that route is to run approximately an hour before and an hour after Sunday trading hours in the town. So very much aimed at getting people into work if they're working in the shops, and obviously getting people to go shopping in the town and to try and boost the economy that way. So that service will very much focus on those hours during the day. We're also looking to run 376 again, extend that further on, so the journeys will come down to Yeovil throughout the day on a Sunday, and that will enable people to travel north of the town to get to Yeovil, to get to Wells, sorry, and even to Bristol and back in the day if they choose to do that. We're also looking, and we've had a number of requests about the CR6. This is a Dorset funded service which comes up from Bridport. But one of the issues that's been pointed out to us is that if you want to go the other way from Yeovil to Bridport, you have to travel early in the morning, about 8:30. You have to come back by 1 o'clock because that's the last bus back that comes all the way back through to Yeovil. We're looking to extend that service so that we have a journey at around 5 o'clock in the evening from from Bridport back to Yeovil. So that will enable people who want to go for the whole day, and that includes Saturdays, being able to travel down to Bridport, have more opportunity to go and to come back at different times. So that's a relatively minor improvement, but it's something that we've had a lot of requests to do. And then finally, we're going to look to repurpose Service 11 in Yeovil. Going back to the 51, one of the issues with the 51, it serves Abbey Manor Park area and Larkhill Road in Yeovil. The 11, to a certain extent, competes with that service. First have told us that the 51 is suffering and it is not viable as it stands at the moment. So what we're looking to do is to make way by moving the 11 to another area of the town to provide a new service elsewhere, giving the 51 exclusive area around Abbey Manor Park and Larkhill Road. And looking at the passenger numbers and those that we've shared with the operator, they believe that by doing that, it will keep the Service 51 commercial for the time being, but they do want a little bit of time to look at that and just make sure that passengers will transfer across from the 11 to the 51 in similar numbers. If that happens, our plan would then be for September to introduce an evening service on the 51 in Yeovil, because one of the things we've stuck to all along with evening service is that we will only put on evening journeys where the daytime service is commercially viable. And because the 51 is borderline at the moment and they're saying it's not viable, we need time to assess that, make sure that the passengers transferring across on the 11 continue to make the service viable. And at that point, we can introduce an evening service if that works. With the 11, we plan to introduce a new service. We've only started discussions fairly recently on this, but I can give you a rough idea of where it's likely to serve. The idea is to go out along West Coker Road to the estates at Bumford, come down the hill, serve the Somerset Council offices at Brimpton Way, serve Westlands, back into town, and it will also serve the unique part of the 11 that will still exist, and that's the bit up through Preston Grove to the surgery there and round. So it'll be a town service basically running hourly, pretty much like the 11 does at the moment, but it will operate in a slightly different area to introduce a new area of the town that currently has either very poor service, or in the case of Lysander Road and that area, no service at all at the moment. So that's how we're looking to improve town services in Yeovil.
And on the capital side, we're looking at where we can deliver bus priority through traffic signal improvements. We're using technology packages that we're upgrading technology in Taunton at the moment. So rather than putting in bus lanes, it's about putting in a new technology that prioritises the bus through the traffic signals. So we're looking to roll out that programme into Yeovil, and you'll see that in the Bridgewater package as well. And the other thing that we're looking to do in Yeovil is around the transport hub. You'll be aware of the Glover's Walk work that's going on at the moment. We're tying in really closely with the regeneration team and the work that they're doing, and we're looking at the feasibility of what the Yeovil Transport Hub would look like. We did have requests to deliver a new transport hub in Yeovil in the next financial year. It's just not feasible within the timeframes to actually deliver it within a 1 year funding package, but we would obviously then look into the future funding packages to how we could deliver that.
Okay, moving on to Bridgewater. First thing we want to do on evening services, the 21, as I've already mentioned, from Taunton to Bridgewater will remain, but we now want to extend it. We want to extend it to the full length of the 21 service and bring in Highbridge and Burnham-on-Sea into the evening network as well. So the plan is to extend that service up to 11 o'clock in the evening to run out as far as Burnham and back. You'll notice here support for existing services, service 14. That's a service that runs between Cannington and Bridgewater. Unfortunately, the current operator has indicated to us that it's no longer viable. So we are going to look at replacing that service initially on a like-for-like basis. So we'll be going out to tender on that one to replace it and maintain that service because there are vital links for students to get into college, and it provides a daytime hourly service to residents of Cannington and Wemden. So we want to maintain that service. One of the big improvements we want to make is to the town service in Bridgewater. Currently, the town bus B1 only runs in between college time, the start and finish of college. And the reason it does that is because a bus that runs a college journey into Bridgewater College then provides that town service. We want to improve the town service significantly by increasing the daytime so that the service runs from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening. And the way we're going to do that is simply to add another bus running all day long on an hourly bus service. But we've asked the operator to maintain their service as well during the off-peak, so that between the hours of roughly 9 and 3 in the afternoon, there'll be a half-hourly town service in Bridgewater. So we'll double the frequency at the time of day when people are looking to get to doctor's surgeries, they're looking to get to the hospital, they're looking to get to shops in the town. So that will be a significant improvement for the town service for Bridgewater. And we're also going to introduce a Sunday service, again, based on what I described earlier for Yeovil, starting an hour before Sunday trading times and finishing an hour after, and again providing an hourly frequency through the day to get people in and out, again mainly to attract them to get to the shops, but also to link to the 21, which runs on Sunday for travel elsewhere. Once again, we'd like to improve the demand responsive transport in the Sedgemoor area. We're going to roll out digital demand responsive transport in this area as well. And we're also going to, again, increase the times from 9 to 5 currently to 7:30 to 5:30, so that we get more coverage for Sedgemoor, and that hopefully we can boost numbers again by introducing the digital element for the scheme, whilst again maintaining the telephone line for those people who are not connected digitally and can still make their bookings online.
And once again, with the bus signal improvements, the priority improvements, it's a similar technology solution that we've been looking for. So just to rest assured that we're not looking for more roadworks. I know this Bridgewater is challenging at the moment, so it's a technology solution that we're looking for to make improved bus priority around Bridgewater. Similarly, with the Bridgewater Transport Hub, we'll look at the feasibility of improvements at the existing bus station in Bridgewater and see what we can do there. And finally, on Bridgewater, there's that point around bus and rail integration and making sure the buses can get into Bridgewater train station. So just some work there to make that happen and make that effective in Bridgewater.
Then turning to other initiatives around the county. So again, this is existing support. We're going to maintain existing support for Service 25, Dalton Taunton, and I'll revisit that in a moment. We're going to maintain the 30 town service in Frome. On Service 126, Axbridge to Wells, that's actually a service which goes over the border into North Somerset and goes to Weston-super-Mare. I'm pleased to say that North Somerset have agreed to continue their funding for that service, so it will continue to run between Wells and Weston-super-Mare, and we're going to slightly improve the service. So on Saturdays at the moment, there is a lower frequency than Mondays to Fridays. We're going to introduce the Monday to Friday service on Saturday, so there'll be more journeys, because one of the issues we've had with the 126 on Saturday, particularly in the summer, has been a bit of overloading from time to time. So we're going to increase the frequency slightly on Saturdays to try and address that issue. So effectively, there's a 6-day timetable running at more or less the same times. And then we provide funding currently for the D2 through to Bath in the evenings, and we're going to continue to maintain that funding. Some of the new things we're looking to do, and I'll return to Service 25, is we're going to change 25. I think it's fair to say that 25 has struggled. Even with the funding we've been giving it, it struggles. We've had lots of issues with timekeeping. We've had lots of issues of reliability on the service. So we want to do something a bit different with Service 25. And the plan is that we're going to run the first journey and the last journey from Dulverton to Taunton direct. Same as it does at the moment. But during the daytime, we're going to run the service between Taunton and Wiveliscombe and Taunton and Copford St Luke. And then we're going to provide Service 26 with a smaller vehicle to provide connecting journeys, Dulverton to Wiveliscombe, to pick up the 25 to travel into Taunton. So if you look at the 25, sometimes you'll see double-deck buses running all the way out to Dulverton. Often as not, by the time they leave Wiveliscombe, they have 2 or 3 passengers and not a lot more on there. So what we're doing is putting a more sensible size of vehicle onto those journeys. And by doing that, we can then use the current resources that are on the 25 to provide a better service between Wiveliscombe and Taunton and Copford St Luke and Taunton. And the way that's going to work is that buses themselves will provide a longer journey from Wiveliscombe into Taunton, then a shorter journey back out to Copford and back in again. By doing that, we believe the service will be more reliable. The operator has introduced new scheduling software, which is they've analysed all the pickup points along the route to determine the average journey time between each pickup point. They're rescheduling the timetable, and we've now got a timetable which we're going to use for that service. The journeys are split up more. So just to describe, when a bus goes to Dulverton and back and a bus goes shorter as it does to Wiveliscombe, you often find the 2 buses are tripping over each other on the way back, so they run very close together. By doing it this way, the journeys are better spaced throughout the day. And then the other advantage of doing this is that in the evenings, we find that students particularly have to wait till 5:40, the last bus on the 25, to get back to Dulverton, but in particular to Wiveliscombe and Milderton. For the Dulverton students, we have had for many years a small minibus that takes those students directly back to places, Dulverton and Bushford. What we're going to do now with this timetable is to be able to introduce a journey at 4:42 in the afternoon from Richard Hewish to take students back as far as Wiveliscombe. So almost all the students now, unless you live in places like Shillingford and that kind of area, will have a bus to go back home at the end of the college day and not have to wait till the last bus at 5:40. And that 5:40 will run all the way through to Dalberton. Another new service in the area is that we've had a number of representations to provide a link which used to be there years ago between Wirbeliscombe and Wellington. We're going to look to reintroduce this on a trial basis. Initially, we're looking at 2 days of the week that we want to do this. And essentially, this will be a bus service in between the peaks. So a shopping service, really, which provides journeys for people living in Wellington to visit Wirbeliscombe, and those in Wirbeliscombe and Wellington, and obviously Milverton and Langford Barville in between. We're able to also look at West Buckland is the other option as well. So we're looking to extend it to West Buckland because people there are very isolated from the main 22 service. So we wanted to roll that in and provide that service as well. So it's a shopping service. It'll be provided by one of our vehicles based at Silk Mills, and it'll operate in between the peaks. And we'll see how that goes. And obviously, if it's very popular, we can look to extend that further in the future. But that service hasn't run for at least, I think about 13, 14 years now. So we're introducing something that ran a long time ago and was originally cut. And we're trying to do it on a small scale to start with to see how that performs.
And the final one on this slide is around service 30 in Frome, which is the Frome town service, and the introduction of an electric vehicle. That's a service that we operate ourselves, and we think that's a reasonable option for us to trial an electric vehicle running on that route. So we're looking to buy an electric vehicle that we could then use to run on that route. So that's our first kind of foray, really, if you like, into us running electric vehicles on our services.
And then finally, for other initiatives, we're looking to improve passenger information. We have been having discussions with First South West about their timetable booklet. And what we're looking to do is introduce a county-wide timetable bus map and booklet, working with them because they already provide such information for their services, expand it to all services in the county and all operators, so that there's an interactive map, there's an online timetable, but that's printable so people can print off individual timetables. We're not able to introduce that in April at this change because there's a lot of work to do on that, but the aim would be to have that up and running for September when the second changes take place during the year. But in the meantime, we'll be doing obviously a lot of marketing of the new and improved services and promoting of those. We'll be doing a lot more monitoring. We do a passenger survey each year. We'll want to continue that, and we'll be doing a lot of evaluating of the routes that we've introduced and the changes we've made. So all that work will continue throughout the year.
And last but by no means least, on this slide, we've got waiting facilities for passengers and passenger information. The two kind of go hand in hand somewhat, but we've got, you'll notice that across the county we've got kind of different types of waiting facilities, different types of bus shelters, bus stops, etc., across the county. We need to kind of understand what a programme of rolling out good quality infrastructure looks like across the county and make sure that we then can roll out a programme in successive years. So it can't all be done in 1 year, but we'll start that process by getting the basics of what does the Somerset brand of bus shelters and that look like, and where should they be, and all of those kind of things, and real-time information going alongside that. We don't have much in the way of real-time information, if any, in the county at the moment. So just starting to roll those out, probably at the major hubs to start with, but then beyond that, we'll work out kind of how we deliver that. So that's the detail, Chair. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, got some questions. I just say, first of all, it was a very thorough report, and I'm delighted about the electric bus in Frome. I will be taking the entire credit for that initiative and probably have my picture taken by the electric bus for the local papers. So thank you for that. Moving on, Councillor Andy Dingwall's got his hand up first.
Dawn's in my ears asking for an invite to that photo.
Sorry?
I want to be on the cover 3 times with
Thank you very much. Thank you for this report, and thank you as well for advance sight of it as the shadow lead member. I've got plenty of time to digest this. It's really helpful to have. A couple of questions, hopefully none too complicated. The feasibility studies on the transport hubs are marked up as revenue expense rather than capital expense, but the transport hub work in Taunton was capital expense. So I was wondering why the feasibility study for what would become a capital expenditure project, the revenue expense.
So it would only become a capital expenditure at the point at which we commit to delivering something capital.
Yep.
If we never commit to delivering something capital, we would have to revenueize it if we spend capital. Okay. So we're effectively spending the revenue money because we've got revenue money. We're spending the revenue money we've got.
So I've got a question. It was highlighted. I think it was service 27. I can't remember the number. There's a minibus trial going on between Wellington in that area. Does this have potential for some of the less used rural connections? So I'm thinking, without going too tactical, between Western Zoyland and Bridgewater, within my patch, there's maybe 2 buses a day. There's definite call for it, but maybe not financially viable with a big 32. How many seater C1s, a 16 seater? Are they significantly cheaper to run? Is that something that we might look to see if this trial goes well?
Western Zoyland to Bridgewater, the 16 runs along there. There's about 5 journeys, I think, a day, one by Hatch Green Coaches. That. What we try to do is to, as I alluded to earlier, we had a lot of market day services years ago, things that would run once or twice a week, taking people shopping. A lot of those are being replaced by the Slinky service. And we think that by digitising the Slinky service, what we've seen in Somerton is the usage goes up. So individual people are using the service more, and as people get to learn about it and how easy it is to book journeys, they're booking more journeys. And they rather than make a phone call, they can just do it themselves. So what we're hoping is that digitalisation in Sedgemoor and Taunton will drive up the use of those. I mean, they're already quite well used, but they're used by, if you like, a group of people who prefer to be on the phone and that kind of thing. And we've always struggled to get younger people to use the service. And by digitising it, we're hoping to do that by extending the hours. We've already got younger people in Somerton, children travelling to school, things like that, using them. So that's what we're hoping to do. In terms of providing a bus, it is individually more expensive to provide a bigger bus on a dedicated service. And of course, nobody could turn up. That's the issue. So if the Slinky bus doesn't get bookings, it doesn't run, it sits in the yard. So we are saving money from that point of view. But if introducing the Slinky shows a big use in a certain area, bigger than Slinky can cope with, then we can look at introducing local bus services. And we have our own fleet that we can use, particularly in between the peaks. We've got vehicles available. Yeah.
Cool. As a regular user of London buses, who I think are quite far advanced on the digitisation, I'm looking forward to seeing some of that. And the final question I've got is whether or not the Heart of Wessex bus franchising team is a consultee for this report. I've had an email come through from the leader of the group there that appears to have referred Somerset Council to the Department of Transport for what's perceived as multiple breaches of the Bus Back Better and the National Bus Strategy. I've got an email in there. I won't go through all the lists because we'll be here for an hour as we go through. But I wanted to check: are you guys aware that referral to the Department of Transport has happened, and what might the risk here be?
I'm certainly not aware of that. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, can we catch up after the meeting? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rob Reed.
Thank you, Jay. No, very good presentation. Quick question: the evening services, such as the #1 Yeovil to Shepton, that will be a.
No, sorry, the one is not an evening service. The one is the existing daytime service that we fund at the moment.
Yes.
BSIP funding.
Oh, it came up under new evening services. So I just wondered, is that happening or no?
No, there's not an evening service Yeovil to Shepton Malling. No.
Okay. And the other question is, there was up until now some question about a young person's rail card. Has there been any progress on that? Young person's bus pass, sorry.
We've got nothing in the proposals here, but what we are aware of is the DfT are looking at this as a nationwide action. So when we've had some discussions with the DfT, some briefings from the DfT, where they talked about the further funding, the ongoing funding, 3-year settlements. They are looking at some kind of young persons rail card type issue for younger people, those over 16. There's no detail yet. They haven't decided what the age group will be. They haven't decided how it will be delivered, whether it will be a discount, whether it will be like a concessionary pass, free fares. But they have advised local authorities that they are looking at this centrally along the lines of, if there is a scheme, assuming there would be central funding to do that. And we should hear more, I think, in the autumn of this year as to whether that scheme is going to go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Dawn Denton, please.
I've got no sound online.
No sound. Okay.
Can you hear that, Mandy?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so one of my neighbours actually drives the 30, which is great. But we're also really very lucky to have Peter Travers from the Somerset Bus Partnership in one of my villages. And he has been really encouraging of the local communities getting bus champions. And I think that's made a really big difference to some of the communities, because they are there to be able to advise on things like timetables and encourage people to take days out on the buses. And what's happened at the Frome Town Council, the bus champions gone and spoken to like Sainsbury's about the bus shelter, and they've gone, oh, we'll sort it, because it's really, you know, good for our community to have that. So that's brilliant. I see the numbers really for the Slinky. Is that good or bad? Are the numbers going up? Because in Frome, there are a lot of people who are unaware of it, and I'm trying desperately to try and get the message out. I think the numbers here are stats from 2022, 23. Do we have any increase or decrease for those?
Sorry, on top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly what the numbers are for Slinky at the moment. They're generally either hovering at a certain level or increasing. Certainly the Somerton one, because we only introduced that last year, has seen quite a significant increase over time. And that's why we want to start rolling out the digital. And the idea is, if we get future funding, we can then do that for Mendip as well, and the South Somerset one. So essentially, we've picked, if you like, the Sedgemoor and the Taunton purely because we have a bit more control over that, because we run both of those now. Okay. So it's easy for us to introduce. But we are looking to do that for Mendip and for Sedgemoor. For South Somerset, we want to get more digitised.
So would you like us to do more promotion on the
we'd love more
as councillors in this room in our local area?
Yeah,
okay.
we do get this a lot, so that people say they're not aware of it. I mean, we do try to do a lot of marketing, a lot of promotion through our comms team and things, and we'll do some more going forward. But yeah, there is still capacity on those services.
Right. Okay, so we'll be doing more of that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Matt Martin first.
Right, Matt. I'll take Matt Mellon. I'm happy.
I know Matt Mellon. Sorry,
it's going to be my new rock and roll name. But thank you to the officers for this very comprehensive report. I appreciate it. And I don't really have anything to add to the report or questions about it, because it is comprehensive. So I'll use the platform that I've got now to roll out my biannual complaint about rural bus services in the fact that it'll get recorded somewhere. I think 3 years ago, 12 million, or was it 13 million, was allocated to the Taunton bus service, and it was used to widen some bus lanes or extend some bus lanes. And when I complained at the time that was used in Taunton and why not for the rest of the county, the idea was that it would trickle down somehow and prove that we could run a bus service viably, and then it would be spread out to the rest of the county. But still, we're talking about Yeovil, Taunton, we're talking about Frome, and Frome has buses. It's cool, they're nice, but we don't have any in rural places. There are lots of us. According to the the statistics on page 96 of this report, 48% of our population is rural. Urban passengers can, for the most part, walk to their destinations. It might be 2 miles that way, but it's 2 miles, where rural guys can't. And there's a reason that the villages, the smaller settlements, are becoming more and more isolated in Somerset. You know, they can't go anywhere. The pubs are shut down. The post office is shut down. So they sit at home and do whatever they do. I have no idea, but they can't go anywhere. They maybe don't use the internet, so the online booking systems might be a way out of commission for them. So well, we have student travel as well. We have a recent consultation that came out. In fact, it was just yesterday, wasn't it? A consultation came out on student travel. That's going to be wound up in a few weeks' time. But this is a real problem to it. Even where I am, Mere and West Hay, you know, it's 7 miles or thereabouts to get to Strode College. And as a consequence, the kids don't go because they can't go. So once again, I don't really know what they do. The rural settlements have a very poor or no service. There's a bus stop in Mere that I have been keeping my eye on for years now, because I noticed a few years ago that the timetable that was in it was last updated in 2015. So I would occasionally take a photograph of it and chuckle to myself. I noticed about 3 weeks ago it disappeared altogether. There's no timetable there now. So maybe they've just given up on us. I appreciate John's comment about the viability of services, but I would contend that it's not really an argument to say that customers aren't using the services, so there's no point in them having there. The service anywhere needs to be in place, and it needs to have been proved viable to the local people before they'll start to use it. You know, if they've got to plan their day around a bus service, they need to know that it's going to turn up. I mean, apparently we have 2 buses a day in West Hay. I've never seen their tyre prints. Is that all the things there? Yes, I think so. But I spent a good part of my youth working in Germany, Buchenkamp, just outside Hamburg. Lovely place. But the bus service there was astonishing. Astonishing. You could set your watch by it, much like Japan. I know Germans are noted for this stuff, but if Mussolini did it as well, didn't he? But I know that they're known for their accuracy and whatever. But if it can be done in one part of Europe, why can't we? Have I lost my order? I'm back on, right. It does worry me that we do seem to have a growing disconnect between the rural and the urban in Somerset. And we're concentrating more and more on the Yeovils, the Tauntons, the Froomes. Again, these are all very successful places, but I do want to fly the flag for rural Somerset. We're all going on about cider and how it's so lovely in Somerset, and that's why people like me moved down here. It's really beautiful, but we can't just forget the villages. Our settlements are dying, and we need the bus service there. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome back. I would. Do you want to come back on that point, Richard? Yeah. Okay. No, I think that if you could note them and come back at the same time on any other points that come up, in a sense of summary. Yeah, I just wanted to say that though we might be glorying in this wonderful bus service in Broome, we've certainly had to fight very hard to keep the bus to Bath running in the night. People's work depends on it. So, but that doesn't detract from your point. And perhaps John or Sunita would like to answer those.
Yeah, I'd say it's a real challenge. You can't deny it's a real challenge. It's a product of the way buses are funded in this country and the way they are run commercially. And what we're trying to do as a county, which you won't see replicated in many other places, is run some services ourselves that mean that we actually have some services. We've got quite a large fleet of buses now that we run. You won't see those in other counties, and we run our own services around particular places. So the services we've mentioned today, where we're putting on and we're trialing stuff, that's because we've got a fleet of buses, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to work wider across the county. we've always said that the BSIP was about, you're right, trialing it in Taunton, rolling it out wider. That continues. This is just the next round of that. And yes, we go wider and we go wider still into more rural areas. The demand responsive transport, and I'm going to look at John, I think I'm right in saying covers every area of Somerset in one way, shape or form, and that is there for everyone to use. So actually, the more people can use that demand responsive transport, use that slinky service, the better it will become. And then we can see whether there are routes that we can actually put on, you know, a scheduled service where that might be viable. But we do get it. It's just a challenging place to work in.
Could I
Yes,
just
John.
come back on the details? So Mere West Hay is served by the 668 service, which is funded. It's operated by Libra Travel. There are 4 journeys in each direction each day, and 2 of them are timed specifically to get students into Stoke College. So they get in the right time, and that bus leaves Stoke College in the afternoon. And we work very closely with the colleges in Somerset to try to ensure as comprehensive a network as we can for college students trying to get in. They may not be able to travel during the day or come in late or go home early, but they can get in at the start and finish times of the day in most cases across Somerset.
Thank you. Now I've got Dave Mansell, 2 online, Mandy and Helen, and then come back to Richard. I'd like to stop it there unless anybody's got any real objections. So we'll go over to Dave Mansell.
Thank you. A few comments and I think a couple of questions. And I will start by saying thanks very much, Richard, Sam and John. Very interesting and a good package. I think you've done, I will say you've done a good job here. So I'm pleased to see and delighted that you brought it to this committee today to see that. So thank you. I will mention on DRT, and I sound a bit negative, but I'll get more positive just to, so I did look at I noticed the stats in there, and I am someone who's interested in numbers, and I did do a calculation, which I believe is correct, which shows that the use of Slinky 22-23, which I think was the year in there, was 1%, less than 1% of public transport. So at that time, it was very low, and we've made the comments about people don't know about it. That's my experience as well. But clearly, you've been doing things at Somerton, and the dynamic does change with the digital. So I am encouraged by what you're saying about that. So I'm keen to see where that goes. It sounds good, so I'm willing to, run with that, and it sounds as though that can turn Slinky around and make it a much better and much better, more used service. So I'm pleased to see how that now works out elsewhere. Which brings me to one question, because we've heard that it's going digital in Sedgemoor. Where else was it? Taunton and maybe somewhere else. Wellington and Minehead, can I just ask about those? Will they happen yet, or in the future? The Slinky buses that the areas going to them. I absolutely take the points Matt made on rural and very much agree. I think there is a bit of rural in here though, which is why I'm sort of willing to say it's a good package. But yes, it does need to go further. So I do have a certain amount of agreement with what you say. But there are some trials here, so I'm pleased to see it does tick a lot of boxes. So my second question would be, could we have the slides afterwards? I'll be really keen to see the timetables for the new services as well once they're available. Thank you.
I can just come back on the Slinkies. So yeah, the answer is Wellington will be digital because it's part of the Taunton area, but Minehead won't be to start with. But as I say, what we're looking to do is to roll this out. There are a lot of setup costs to start with this. So if we get, as we're expecting, a further settlement next year, our hope would then be to look at West Somerset and Mendip, and South Somerset. So finish off the areas that haven't been digitised. That's the plan, really, is to roll it out across the board.
Happy to share the slides afterwards. I think the timetables are in draft at the moment. So it'll be a little while before we'll get to those, but yeah, we're happy to share the slides.
Mandy Chilcott online, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, if I may. I suppose that my first one is a gentle challenge around getting children to and from college. If you want to go to Bridgewater College from Minehead, you leave at 7:10 in the morning. There's one bus that gets you up there, and that gets you back at 6:20 at night. That's it. One up, one back, which is a very, very long day, especially if you have challenges around concentration and learning. My comments were actually about the demand responsive, and you've used Slinky and demand responsive in the same sentence. I know Slinky do a range of services. By demand responsive, are you meaning someone books a trip and then they turn up to pick them up? That was my first question. I was getting confused listening.
Yes, that's right. They book at the moment. People have to book by phone, and then obviously they agree a pickup point and a pickup time. But with digital, they'll be able to do it themselves. And when they're signed up originally for digital, they nominate their pickup point, which can be their home, but will often be something where we group people, say a local bus stop or something like that. But once that's agreed, every time they book after that, it automatically knows where they pick up the bus, and literally the system will just find the time that they've requested. It'll give them that time if it's available. If not, it'll give them other options. So yeah, it is. It's make an inquiry either digitally or by phone, and then the transport comes to collect you.
And did you say that's the whole of Somerset now? Is within that?
At the moment, Slinky runs pretty much across the whole of Somerset, but there's only one digital area currently, and that's Somerset. But we'll be adding Thornton and Wellington and Sedgemoor.
Thank you very much. And just to follow up, really, the other speakers that have talked about sort of rurality, huge challenge. I like the demand responsive because it means if no one needs a bus, it doesn't have to go. But I would also say around all bus users, we have so many that are cancelled. I've got one in this morning that's just cancelled. I've got social media full of it. Worse than that, they were waiting for the next bus only to find that it had rerouted due to a road closure and was not going through 5 or 6 stops. So you've got people trying to get to college, trying to get to Taunton for hospital appointments. There is no bus. They've cancelled it. One of the buses today, and the other one they've rerouted and knocked out a load of bus stops in doing so. So, people get upset, they lose confidence, and then they just will not catch a bus again. Now, until we've got a really regular and reliable service, people are not going to change the way that they travel. And so it's fine adding new ones, which is fantastic, but you need some reliability around the existing bus routes on top of that, because I've got people now, if they want to go to perhaps to hospital in Taunton to an appointment, they are going several hours earlier than needs be just in case the bus doesn't turn up, which just is not great for the public. So slight moan, but I just think the two go hand in hand. Great that they're expanding, great that there's new initiatives, but for goodness sake, we need to get what we've got running now running regularly, and so that it's reliable for bus users.
Okay, thank you, John. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just to say, so the 28 in particular is a commercial service, obviously run by First South West, but in the discussions we've had with them, they are retiming and rescheduling a lot of their services for April. They've got, as I mentioned earlier, a new scheduling system, so they will be allowing more running time and things like that where it's needed. So their view is that their services will become more reliable, certainly in terms of timekeeping, and the proof of the pudding will be obviously when they introduce those new services. The other thing coming down the road, of course, for Service 28 is new vehicles. So the electric vehicles are still on track. We expect them to be start arriving in the spring into the summer, and once those vehicles come online, then hopefully we'll have more reliable, less breakdowns, less issues with vehicles all round. So we're hoping to see a significant improvement in First South West services, not only 28 but many other services as well as we come into the spring and summertime.
Thank you. I really hope if we're supplying the buses, which again is fantastic news, we'll have a bit more power to our elbow if we do find they're not running as regularly as they should be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mandy. Councillor Helen Kay.
Yeah, thank you. This is a question that may relate to the previous paper as well. It's just about, and maybe Henry Hobhouse might be able to answer. It's regarding Castle Carey Station. I've just been looking up that it has 178 parking spaces, and it also has 6 buses a day going from Yeovil to Shepton Mallet, and they go past the station to pick people up. I don't know if that's an integrated transport strategy where they pick people up as the trains come in or drop them off as the trains go out. But Castle Carey Station is pretty important, really, because it's one of the few fast train lines that we've got going towards London and the southwest. So I was just wondering about whether or not there should be more bus capacity there. So we've got also buses going perhaps towards Bruton or serving the villages, because there may well be people that live in the villages, park at Castle Carey Station and then go and work in London. I don't know. There may be facts and figures that Matthew Prince might have about that use of that particular station, what people use it for. But I was just wondering if more bus services to and from Castle Carey might be useful as well to discourage people from always driving to the station. Thank you.
John.
They use the station to get on the train. Sorry to be facetious. The number 1 bus goes from Shepton through Castle Carey Station and then visits almost every village in my division before it gets to Yeovil, because it follows the 359. Yes, it would be lovely to have more buses. The major problem with the number 1 bus is it does not run in the evening. So you cannot get to Yeovil to go to a film or a play or anything by bus, because you can't get home again.
Does that answer the question, John, or do you want to elucidate?
Can I just come back on Castle Carey Station? It's served by 2 regular bus services, roughly with the same number of journeys. So you've got the one going from Shepton Mallet to Yeovil and the 667, which goes straight across to Wincanton. The problem that we have with those services, or it's not a problem really, it's what they do, is that we have a lot of student movements, both school and college, both on the 1 and the 667. So the timetables are very much determined by moving those students around. We have buses that the 1, for instance, connects with buses that go to Stoke College in the morning. We're taking students into Yeovil College. We're taking students going the other way into the secondary school in Shepton Mallet. And we're also trying to get students to the Bruton schools in the morning. So it's quite a complicated network of making sure all those kids get to and from school morning and afternoon. And that pretty much determines the timetable of both those services throughout the day, because we're trying to keep the buses moving. So essentially, the whole focus of those 2 timetables is very much student movements, but they do go through the stations. But no, they don't. They're not timed specifically to meet the trains. That is true.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to come back?
We now have a Pacific bus stop in the station due to the Newt, which has allowed the extra car parking spaces and don't make a face, Richard. If you haven't got the Newt there, you would have car parking still where the buses stop. The buses used to stop on the main road outside the station. They now drive in, and it is properly organised.
Okay, Richard. Yep.
Just to come back and challenge that, I've had officers working extraordinarily hard to get that particular situation sorted out with the buses stopping in the central place at Castle Carey. I think they've done a fantastic job in releasing that. I take on board your point about the Newt and the parking spaces in the first place, but we've had to work extra hard to get that through. I would like to. I'll just pick up on the promotion of the Slinky, the DRT, and say that you mentioned Dawn. You mentioned Peter Travis. But actually, one of the things we've been really working hard with is working with the Somerset Bus Partnership, and they have inputted into this whole scheme, or what we did, and we presented it to them, and they were pleasantly surprised by the ingenuity of some of the things that we've managed to bring. But in particular on the DRT, I'd like to name Rosa Kell and Tony Rees of the Somerset Bus Partnership, who've spent an extraordinary amount of time also promoting these services. And I've no doubt when it rolls out to the other areas, they will be taking the DRTs to different villages along the route and promoting them as well. I've got no doubt that they will be part of the full promotion of that. But you know, I don't know how many times I've shared on Facebook the rollout of the Slinky, in particular in my area, which does cover, just about covers the Somerton digital thing. So, and I would hope that every councillor will start to do the same. If you follow Travel Somerset, we do promote it very strongly. And so that's what I'd say. So yeah, just going back to the full story. We've worked very hard with all the requests that have come forward, and we've listened in particular with the bus user groups on this, and I consider it an incredible piece of work. You've heard about the rerouting of buses and the changes to just get things to work better. And there is no doubt that the rurality of Somerset has made buses particularly difficult, and we've touched on we've touched on reliability and frequency, and that is, as Councillor Chilcott says, is paramount in people having confidence in the bus service, and therefore driving up numbers. And it's work that is ongoing and every day. There's absolutely no doubt that every single missed bus, broken down bus or whatever causes problems, and we're constantly fighting to get a better service, and we're very hopeful that the work that we've been doing, which is ongoing work, and will not stop. We will never cease to be fighting on this and trying to improve things as best we can, but don't ever forget the difficulties that we have and the funding aspect of it. So we're hopeful that the multi-year settlement will consider everything, all the difficulties that Somerset has, and just to say, we're on a rolling process. Let's see what next year's funding brings, and we're very hopeful that we're now starting to round the corner from decline to improvement.
Thank you.
And I think this is the way forward.
Thank you, Richard. And we need to draw that to a close now. So thank you, John. Thanks, Denise. Thank you for the work you put in. And without further ado, we better move on to the active travel delivery presentation. Richard, you are introducing it, and it's Alan Muir who's here.
Yep, so we're bringing this paper to share the breadth of work that's going to be ongoing with active travel. The paper shows where we are with a large number of schemes we're working on across the county. We're extremely pleased with the very recent news on the funding allocation for Somerset, and and we're starting to look at how we can deliver good value for money on the schemes. I'm going to hand over to Alan to give an overview and go from there.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I don't have a specific presentation, so if it's okay with the chair, if I share the report, is that okay to skim through it?
Could you move your microphone a bit nearer to you? Thanks very much.
Better?
That's
yeah. So, as I say, I'll go through this, obviously just on the back of what Councillor Wilkins said. In terms of funding, we were under embargo until the 12th of February, just passed, regarding the initial tranche of funding we were aware of, which was £680,000 roughly. We were made aware not long after that, well, as part of that, I should say, last week, of the over £2 million settlement as well. So just to be clear about that, which is why it's not stated on the report. So just going through the report, obviously we've recruited the vacant role at the time, so myself have fulfilled that role at the start of this year. The active travel team itself is composed of 2 staff roles in name, but as you are all aware, active travel improvements are delivered with the involvement of a wide range of council staff and colleagues. So obviously as part of that work, we are already in discussions with those colleagues to see what we can do better, for example. And obviously what we've tried to capture in the appendix is the breadth of work the council is doing. So obviously, whilst we have the Active Travel England funded schemes, there's a lot of other schemes being delivered through Section 106 funds, through the Levelling Up Fund and so forth. Just to kind of give a brief idea of the design stages mentioned on that appendix. So it goes from feasibility study through to the detailed design stage, construction and post-construction. 10 of those schemes are funded by Active Travel England. And as an update on the tranche that's 680,000 worth, we are preparing that submission with that required in the next month or so. 4.3 kind of just touches on the various other schemes in play. Obviously, I've been in the role just over a month, so as I hope you appreciate, some schemes haven't progressed much further since the predecessor, but that is being progressed on in terms of discussions with the parties involved. In terms of the Strawberry Line, we do have a good relationship with Greenways and Cycle Routes, so they have been able to deliver 2 sections of the path, which are West Shepton Bridge and path and Easton to Hazelwood Farm. Those have been delivered, and as part of continuing that work, 3 sections have been identified to progress those further. And as I've said in the report, due to landowner implications, I've not stated those here. So just going through that, I'll come to the appendix after this bit. So just to kind of
someone's microphone's open on online.
My apologies.
Okay. So we're engaging with the local community network. So we are developing a local steering group, a steering group for active travel. We held a meeting on the 15th of January looking at terms of reference for that group. And really that is a mechanism to identify improvements that may not get captured necessarily in policy or an LSWIP. So just an LSWIP, as you probably all know, is a local cycling walking infrastructure plan. So the next meeting is coming up later this month, and we are looking to progress that further. That group, a key part of that group is seeking consensus in terms of the local community networks, and ideally having an endorsed representative from each LCN on that steering group about active travel. So that just kind of touches on that group as part of our current work programme. We're also looking towards the future, a bit like what Matthew touched on in his presentation, Whilst we get welcome news about the funding from the likes of Active Travel England, we are working towards having an eye in the future as well, so being less reactionary. So we are developing a suite of pipeline work so that those can kind of run in the background, and then when we do get these opportunities, that we can be more selective in terms of what we progress further. And as part of that process, obviously we've got our working relationship with Active Travel England. As identified, there has been a gap in terms of the previous role, predecessor, sorry. But obviously I am keen to make it clear about the council's enthusiasm for active travel, and obviously we do have different characteristics to say the likes of London and Manchester and whatnot, and that we hope to be very supportive with Active Travel England in terms of the precedents we can already offer in terms of the work in the Strawberry Line, and also to just work very closely with them to give us the best position possible moving forward with future funding as well as best practice. And with planning applications, discussions have already taken place with transport colleagues to try and influence planning applications. So we carry out a surgery every 3 weeks to tie in with consultee timescales for planning applications to allow highways development management colleagues to flag up any queries or concerns they may have for a specific site. I should say in tandem with that, we've had positive discussions with Active Travel England, because obviously if an application hits a certain threshold or higher, they are likely to comment on it as well. So we are trying to establish kind of how this progresses better in the future in terms of resources that we have, including themselves. And in terms of legal agreements, we acknowledge there's an opportunity there to consider how funds could be secured, and that could be from funds to do a feasibility study into a route, or in terms of monies towards that area, for example, that could help deliver a route in the future. So just moving on to that appendix, comes up. Apologies for the size of the text. So this kind of gives you a broad overview of the range of schemes that have either been constructed or in progress around Somerset. As touched on in the report, whilst I acknowledge that it may have an urban feel to it, hence those kind of things like the LCN group, and we are working towards how we identify other opportunities that aren't just urban based. I think other than that, leave it in terms of any other questions.
Thank you very much, Alan. Anybody have any questions in the room? Yep, Dave. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. And welcome to the role. I'm very pleased to hear that we have the post filled again. So and good that it sounds as though you're sort of hitting the ground running and finding out what's there and where to go. So good stuff. In terms of the report, could you just confirm the funding amount? I sort of wrote down 2 million. It's 2 million in total. Is it right? Do I understand that correctly? Yeah.
So to be exact, yeah. So the initial tranche of funding was £684,781, and then the consolidated fund that we have only recently heard about is £2,090,657.
Very good. So it's now a total of 2 million, up from what was the 680 before. So okay, good. See how far that goes. I fear it can be soon swallowed up. But I like the sound of some of the things that are going on. What you've called green lanes there, I should like the name. To be honest, I personally prefer quiet lanes. It seems to describe what they're aiming to do well, and so the name gives a clue to what you're doing. So that's me. So I'll be interested to see where that one goes. Though there's mention of 17 sites and being sort of whittled down to 4 going forward. I'd be interested to know where those are, although probably what I'm most interested in is I know there's been work done previously, including funded by the county council, on a quiet lanes proposal between Langford, Budville and Wellington. So I'd be very interested to know if that's on the list, and if not, perhaps I better make sure you receive the details of that, because there has been some work done on it already, looking at the right place to put it. Pleased to hear that you're positive with the greenway schemes, such as the Strawberry Line, which from a distance looks as though it's been making great progress, and really pleasing to see that. There is a proposal for one between Wellington and Taunton, and that's been working with some of the housing developments there, and it looks like it's got a good start from what the housing's going to deliver. So I'll be keeping a close eye to see how that one goes. It's not in my patch, but it's close to it. And the LCN steering group, aware of that starting off, and that sounds like a good initiative, and getting the whole of the county able to feed in. So I feel there's a long way to go, but I'm feeling encouraged. Pleased to see we're moving forward. And if you have got any comments on the Greenway or the Quiet Lanes Green Lane one, that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
I don't have the specific details just now. I know of one scheme, but I don't have them all. But if you're happy to send me the detail of what you're talking about, I can take it further.
Rita.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, you're right that the Strawberry Line work is now going really well. That's testament to the former member of District Council, and I think Councillor White is probably still on the call. What I would say is it takes a long time to deliver long distance routes. It's not a quick fix, and even the sort of money that we've been fortunate enough to receive for next year, it kind of touches the sides, but there's a lot more to do than just that. The effort on the Strawberry Line has been going since the mid-1980s, so it takes time to bring these things to get forwards, and takes a lot of community energy and quite a lot of community effort as well. So I kind of, I guess I'm trying to manage expectations a little bit on those longer distance routes in terms of the funding that we've just received.
Okay. Thank you. I've got Rob, sorry. Rob Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Active travel, yeah, it's a choice not to use the car if you want to. In Evercreech, of course, there is no way out of the village without using the car or the bus. As I mentioned before, we do have an old disused railway running to Shepton Mallet, 2 years, about 2 miles. The landowners are on board for us to use that, so I hope that the Strawberry Line have been looking at it. I know, so I'm flagging that, make sure it's on the radar. And of course, we talked to the Bath and West, and they're very keen to get a road down from Shepton to the Bath and West. So I hope that's on the radar too. There was a failed planning application which would have put another path in from the Bath and West to Ditchit, which means that then we could have gone all the way out to Castle Carey Station on the quiet road. But that might come back, who knows. But I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, Active Travel, absolutely brilliant, all for it. Hope they're on the radar and we can take them forward. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Richard? Okay. Oh, Dawn.
Thank you. I noticed with the school streets, I have a question about, is that all, if anybody wants to apply for school streets, does that come from that pot of money, or is there additional money for the school streets, so the safer streets programs in the towns?
In terms of the school streets, like that schemes came through a specific tranche of Active Travel England funding.
Okay.
So basically,
it would be the same kind of process in terms of meeting the funding criteria of Active Travel England in terms of what schemes kind of get put forward. But that we've not had the detail yet for that latest over £2 million yet. So we'd be working on, and we'll obviously be engaging with councillors as part of that as well.
Yes,
I
please
just
do.
wanted
I'm
to
going to
also
wind this
know
up in a minute.
If that one is is that one still in a trial period? And if it is in a trial period, if the trial doesn't work, what are the criteria for it not working? And then will it just be withdrawn?
So from School Streets, that is nearly completed as far as I'm aware. Active Travel England did release guidance on School Streets quite recently. I suppose with projects like that, we've still to kind of review it because it's not completed yet and look at how it's been monitored ideally to then kind of learning from it into future ones. Like School Streets are being undertaken in various places around the UK, and yeah, it's something that I've had experience in previous roles as well, and yes, we would look to see what can be done, because obviously the positives are clear in terms of air quality, space for people to walk and wheel. It's creating that safer environment at the school gate to encourage people to make that choice rather than being necessarily feel restricted to a certain mode of transport. So obviously the credentials are there, and obviously we'll be looking closely at for an example to see how we can maybe do it in different ways if need be.
Okay, thank you very much. I had a question, but I'm going to shelve that and talk to Alan directly. And I'm going to let Richard have the last one. And why? No, I really don't think I can take anymore. We've got. I mean, I don't mean that in a mentally unstable way. I mean, but I do really. I mean that we're actually now at 1:45, and if we don't start moving on, we're not going to get through this agenda. So I'm sorry, online. Please email Alan Muir. Thank you. Okay, Richard.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that but both myself and Councillor Wyke, alongside officers as well, have spent a long time talking to, well, I use the words talking to Active Travel England about the rurality of Somerset and how that feeds into their guidance. And we are awaiting a rural guidelines from Active Travel England, which I believe they're due to release in March. So that will also impact how we look at things going forward. So yeah, a lot of work from Councillor Wyke on that, and actually myself. Travelled up to Manchester to my word, I'd also like to point out that I'm hopeful that we will not very shortly not be talking about the Strawberry Line. Good that it is, great that it is, but there's something a bit larger, which is the Somerset Circle, which joins on to the Strawberry Line and loops around. And I think it's very important that we start using that terminology to show that we have much larger ambitions, and it should be the circle, the Somerset Circle and beyond, because there are plenty of rural-based schemes, and I know that we haven't got the funding for them at the moment necessarily, but we are very ambitious. I think I'll leave it there because it's been a long day.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to those online that are waiting to speak, but I really we're going to go to the 4-hour limit in a minute, in 15 minutes. So can we thank Alan for the report, and very nice to see you, Alan, and be prepared for any message. I know there's a couple in the message box as well. And so I'm going to move on to agenda item 9 with the task and finish group update from Henry. Thank you.
I'm not going to take questions after this. We're too late. Please send me an email if you want to talk to me about this. We had our first meeting. We are now waiting for the second meeting when we are going to talk about data, and we are specifically talking to Dr. Andrew Clegg, the IDB and Natural England. And the meeting should take place in April. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. That was briefer than I thought. Having rushed everybody on, that's fine. If you would like to message Henry if you've got any questions. 10 item for the agenda is the following items were circulated: economic strategy update, gravity contract update, highways contract update. Who's taking these? Is it you?
There is no item to take as such, Chair. It's just if members have any queries on those papers that have been circulated.
Did anybody have any questions on those?
Yes, we did ask for Kia's performance report to come to this committee last time round. Could we please make sure it does? Very happy to have it as an information document, but I'd like to know what they're actually achieving.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report actually was circulated as an information item prior to the meeting, so it's in your inboxes to read. It probably didn't have that much notice of being in your inbox. I appreciate that. So if anybody's got any questions on the back of it, then do get in touch with me. I'm happy to talk through where we are with that. But it does set out the performance, particularly on dealing with safety defects, which I think was the key issue. We're developing some more, I guess, thorough and wide-ranging metrics with Kia and our other contractors at the moment, but the basic data is there.
Any other points? Well, there was me rushing it on and we got through those two quickly. Thank you very much. In which case, if there's no other business, I'll close the meeting and we'll look forward to seeing you all on Monday, the 28th of April back here in the Luttrell room again. Thank you. Thank you to all the officers for attending and your help in setting this up. It's been a very smooth meeting, if long. Thank you.